10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, my friends. Thank you so much for coming to spend part of your Thursday, December 21st with me. How is everyone today? Did everybody get their shopping done? I'm still frantically searching on the internet for places that can deliver timely for me because I am a last-minute shopper. Yes, I am. We have an excellent show for you tonight. You may recall that I did two shows on Long Island cold cases in the 80s. And we talked about those cases, and we were wondering whether or not they could be the early work of the suspected Long Island SK, Rex Heuermann, who is currently sitting here on Long Island at the Suffolk County Jail. And he has been indicted and charged with the unalivings of 3 of the 4 Gilgo 4 women. And we had thought for a long time that because these women were found in 2010 when Rex would have been in his early 40s, that perhaps he had some earlier victims. And we went through a number of cases from the early 80s, and that sent my friend Oblivious Benson down the rabbit hole too. And sometimes I say that to you guys, call me Alice, because I went down the rabbit hole on this, and so did she, and she's dug up a lot of stuff for us. So if you remember Oblivious Benson, I know she's a big fan favorite, but she is going to be here in a few minutes. So I'm going to chat with you guys for a few. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the show from last night and some pushback that I got in the comments that I found to be a little bit interesting. I had Kurt from Uncivil Law in here last night, and I thought it was a fun stream, and some people just apparently had other feelings about it and thought that they were doing me a favor by, I don't know, warning me or telling me that it was very disrespectful, that they thought that I was being treated poorly by him, and I didn't see that at all. So I just want to tell you that whatever you thought you saw last night, it did not offend me. I did not consider it to be offensive in any way, shape, or form. I do appreciate your feelings and your warnings, but listen, I don't trash other people on my show, and I would not expect my viewers to trash any of my guests in my comments. So I will ask you that if you do have some things to say about a guest that are not particularly nice, because I do try and be nice, you guys. And listen, I had seen him struggling on some of his own streams, and he's very open about being very sad and being very lonely and his depression. And when he asked to come on the show, someone put it in the chat before the show, said, could you please send him the link? He'd like to come on. I thought, well, hey, if we can help him from being a little less lonely tonight, what's wrong with that, right? Well, I had a lot of unsubscribes today because people didn't seem to like the fact that I would welcome him onto my channel. So I'm just here to be nice to everybody. I don't understand the YouTube drama. I am not participating in the YouTube drama. I started this channel 6 months ago. I have 3 teenage daughters, and I have so much drama in my own house that I cannot keep track of the YouTube drama. And I don't want to be a party to it. I'm not interested. So, yes, I said, give people grace. And this is what I wrote in the comments. I said, listen, it's the holidays. I had seen that perhaps he was lonely, perhaps he wanted to come on, and I thought we did a great deal of cheering him up. And, I don't know, I guess people hold against him things that they've seen him do in the past. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to get into what he may have said to who, because I don't really understand it either. But Megan, I'm sorry if anything was said that was defamatory. I didn't think it was. I tried to shut that down right away. As soon as I heard your name come out of his mouth, I'd shut it down, because I don't really know the beef between you guys. And it's not none of my business. I saw someone who was struggling. I thought they needed some kindness, and that's what I tried to do. And that's what I know that you guys try to do. So listen, I'm not a cupcake. I'm just not a cupcake. I can't please everyone, but if you're here, thank you for being here, because we just try and be kind to everyone. We don't tolerate the bullies. And I didn't think that he was bullying me. I don't, and so I can't have the bullying in the comments. If you want to talk to me about it, please email me. My email is always available. I'm available to talk to you. I'm just going to have the nasty comments deleted. So don't think that I would have nasty comments deleted about anyone. And that's just the way we roll, right, guys? Just the way we roll. So thank you. You didn't see anything wrong with the show. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. People need to grow up. If you felt he did anything you didn't want on your channel, I would. I didn't feel like, so he told me I had nice eyes. I'm at the age where I'm taking every compliment that's coming my way. I don't find that to be misogynistic, okay? I was a young woman lawyer in the early 90s. You want to talk about misogyny? I can tell you a lot of stories. That to me is the furthest thing from misogyny. So I'm sorry if some people were offended by that, but it was not offensive to me. High pointer lover. It was Kurt from Uncivil Law. And I thought it was a lot of fun. I read the Maya order to you from the judge that was awarding an interview of juror number 1. Kurt had already done a stream on it, and usually we disagree. So I thought it would be fun to have him on to hear I did a live reaction to it. I let him on. We did a thing. And then we segued into something else where, he's been talking about how lonely he was on his channel and that he really wants to find someone to share his life with. And I thought that would be nice. Like, hey, wow, maybe we could help Kurt meet somebody. So I had him do a little pitch. And then we thought about doing like a little show, like a dating game show. But, I got a lot of pushback for it. So I'm just saying we had fun. So let's just drop it. Stop the nasty comments in the chat. Because I'm going to have them, not the chat. I'm sorry, not the chat, in the comments. Yeah, I try to be caring. Thank you. Thank you, Patronus Glow. I'm so glad that I learned how to say that properly now. Like all the Harry Potter fans are probably like, it's Patronus. So now I remember Patron, like the tequila. And I've been calling you Patronus Glow for quite some time. Thank you, Rochella. Say it, Melanie, at my age, I'll take any comments at all. Miss the days when I got whistled at. Yeah, I do not find that offensive. You want to tell me I have nice eyes? You want to, I'm fine with that. I don't find it to be icky, gross, or whatever, right? A-Rod, we have different political views. BU, I don't know. I've never broadcast my political views. I don't know what his are. Well, he said he was conservative. Oh, and then somebody else said in my comments, oh, well, I'm unsubscribing because you mentioned the word Trump in your stream last night. And you were promoting a show about it. I said, this was a show about the law, about a Supreme Court decision in Colorado that was discussing the law and whether or not what they did in Colorado was legal. I'm not telling you my political views, but if me mentioning the T word on my channel is going to offend you to such an extent that you have to okay, I'm not a cupcake. I said the name Trump. Betty. Kurt had done a stream earlier in the day explaining the Supreme Court of Colorado decision, which is taking his name off the ballot, and it's going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court. And he had some very, very interesting legal things to talk about. And it was, I find the law fascinating. That's why I'm a lawyer, or a recovering lawyer, because it sucked the soul out of me. So thank you, Melanie Schuyler. I thought it was fun to see Kurt again on here too. But, listen, I'm not a law tuber. I'm not in the clique. I don't know. And this is the second time I met him ever. I don't know the beefs. I don't know the drama. And I want to stay out of it. But I need my viewers to be respectful to my guests. And that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Thank you. Thank you for playing. Have a nice day. All right. So let's bring back. Yes, I think so too, BG. We are all adults and we can agree to disagree. Yeah. And we don't have to personally attack each other either. Right? Pickle Nuts. I thought he was trying to be very respectful. And in fact, the last time I had him on, because I knew it could go, it can always go wrong when you don't know the person that you're inviting on. And I said, here's the rules. I don't like the cursey words. I like to keep it clean. I don't like personal attacks. And I thought he was great. And I thought people saw a different side of him. I'm not a cupcake. I'm not a cupcake. So I know a lot of you had fun last night. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Hey, and thank you. Thank you, Doctor. kind of nice eyes when he sees him. How bad can he be, right? Listen, people can change. I don't know. I thought, like, let's show a little grace to some people around the holidays who may be really lonely and struggling. So, yeah, you know who's got time for that, Matt Bond? You know who's got time for that? Nobody. Nobody. Thank you. Thank you, Matt, for your super chat. All right. What cases am I looking forward to in 2024? That's a great question, Armand. I am going to be covering the Adam Montgomery case out of New Hampshire. If you don't know that case, it is a tragic, tragic case out of New Hampshire. I am looking forward to, well, we'll see what happens with Koberger, because obviously we want to cover that case. I am looking forward to Karen Reed, and I am preparing a show on the Karen Reed case because I have some very different opinions about that case. I've had very strong opinions about that case from the first time that I started hearing about this case. And I know a lot of people have very strong feelings about that case. I happen to think, and I'm not even gonna tell you what I think, you're just gonna have to tune in and see, but I think it's gonna be a great show. So those are 3 that I am looking forward to, and I'm sure there's plenty more that I can't think about right now, because there are so many to cover. And now that we are having some people come over from other places, thank you, True Crime Fangirl. I think the two of you had a great couple streams together. I like you guys. Yeah, thank you so much. Teresa, thanks for your super chat. There was a day when people could speak their minds anyway. I know. LB, sounds great, Melanie. Thank you. If you have any more case ideas, I'll certainly take them. This is Susan. I get more compliments from men since I turned 50. All ages, it happens. And hey, I'm going to take them all. I am too. I'm taking them all. Totally fine with it. I'm totally fine. All right. I'm going to now bring to you the fan favorite, my personal Penelope Garcia. Anybody who watches Criminal Minds knows who Penelope Garcia is. Oblivious Benson. Dun, dun, dun.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Let me adjust my camera. How are you guys doing today, everybody? Melanie, you have pretty eyes.
Oh, thank you, Kat. I'll take compliments from everyone, men, women, children. I don't care.
Let's see who complains. Let's see who gets mad at it.
I'm not. So, Kat, you can. I love your eyes too. I love your glasses.
Hey, I'm all about bully me, man. I do roast battles. Come to Austin and roast battle me. Let's go. Let's talk smack to each other. I'm all about it.
That would be fun.
But
that would
don't
fun
do it
to do a roast.
Don't do it on Melanie's channel. If you don't like me, come to my channel and tell me I suck. I'm totally open to it. I'll hear all your thoughts.
Wait, you said that 4-letter S word in the first couple minutes. I think we're gonna get in trouble.
Well, can we go back? Who Dawn Marie, fix it. Make it stop. Did she put a beep on it?
Dawn Marie. We need a bleep. You know what we need is a 10-second delay. Kind of like they do on like the Oscars now, since Will Smith slapped Chris Rock on the Oscars. Now they have that, like, I think it's like at least a 10-second delay, so they can, shut off the cameras before anything like that happens.
When I worked in radio, we had a 30-second delay. And yes, I do come to it. It's under my name. I'm answering. What is that? Cali Girl. I can't really see
Cali
very
Girl.
well.
Yeah, you do have a channel. And you haven't posted that much.
Yeah, so I should explain. Sorry, everybody. I was gone for a moment. I basically put out 3 videos rapid fire, and then I had to go to Vegas to do a cybersecurity gig for a festival. And then when I came back, I think I got corona and then the flu, and then I busted my knee. And then I was just I was mangled in bed, unable to think. And then I got the flu again. And then I had finals and I finished, I call it crime school. But I got a 4.0 this semester. I have 1 more to go. And then my PI certification fieldwork. And then that's all squaresies. But I was so busy and so sick that I just kind of told everyone I will put out content as soon as I can. And I was still filming it. But long story short, I went back and watched it to do the editing. And I sound like this the whole time, and I couldn't possibly put out content where I'm talking like it's so bad. And so I have to kind of re-record all of it, but I am working on something right now for everybody. And I did an OSINT speech at a nerd night, and it went really well, but I only got through half of it because I talk too much. So right now I'm working my, I guess you could say, what I'm going to do next year. What do they call it? New Year's, when the coming year, the thing that you vow. What's that called? I'm blanking.
You're what now?
You know what I'm talking about? Like New Year's resolution. Is that what it
Oh
is?
yeah, New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
Mhm.
My New Year's resolution is to try to like get as much said in as few words as possible, because I've discovered that I think I talk too much.
Yay,
What is this?
Jason.
Honor.
This is Jason made the
Congratulations,
honor roll
Jason.
for the first time in his
Whoop, whoop,
life
whoop.
and at 50 years old. All right, I'm going to give you full screen for a second so you can introduce yourself to those
Okay.
people who don't know you. I'm going to get onto the YouTube channel and try and put closed captions on per someone's request. So I will be back, and
Excellent.
here's Oblivious Benson.
Excellent. And first I want to do a shout out. I think my mom might be watching. Hi, Mom. If she is, sorry for what you're about to hear. I'm not gonna say any cursey words, but I'll tell you guys, it's very hard for me because some of y'all know I am a stand-up comedian, and I do have a filthy mouth on my channel, but on this channel I'm going to be good tonight. I also I go to school right now for forensics, but I've worked in cybersecurity, OPSEC, digital forensics, and stuff like that as an independent contractor for many years. And I work on cold cases on the side on my free time as part of my victims advocacy work, because I myself was a crime victim. I got beat up and stabbed and mugged. And on top of that, I got a couple of friends who have been missing. Don't mean to laugh. I have very weird people have told me that I laugh when I get uncomfortable or nervous, but it's true. I've got, you know, my old roommate Carl Wiegand went missing in 2012, and then I've got friends whose sisters have gone missing, and I have pretty much ever since those cases happened, and really since I was a lot younger in high school, which was probably like 25 years ago, I have kind of become obsessed with collecting data on cold cases and trying to spot trends. And I've spent a lot of time in school studying behavioral analysis. And I've personally tipped in quite a few cases that led to search warrants. And I found new witnesses on cold cases. And I've had some success in that. And as part of that experience, it led me to helping with really, really old cold cases. I like to focus on like the 70s to the late 90s, mainly in data archive, collecting, scraping, finding everything I possibly can in the public realm using OSINT. And if you don't know what OSINT is, it's open source intelligence. It's basically anything that you can find publicly. I guess some examples of how this has helped, or how I guess personal experience would be the best way to explain why I keep doing it. Because, for example, in 2007, I found a tip online from a young lady who was in a hotel room next door to a person who went missing. And that girl who went missing is my friend's sister. And this tip at the time had only been up for a day or two before the poster took it down. And it had some pretty good details that kind of changed the story of what happened to her, or what may have happened to her. So I kind of saved that because I had no one to reach out to. And I actually didn't know her sister yet. I met her years later. When I did, I showed this to her and she said, "No, we've never seen this before." And I tried to send it to police and they didn't listen. They never called me back. And once I showed it to her, the detective finally took it and was able to speak to her. And she's the only witness to this day in a fairly well known cold case. And because of what she's had to say, it also led to some more people involved in the situation finally being interviewed. It led to I was able to finally see some phone records. And when we looked at the phone records, we'd had T-Mobile representatives, we'd had cell phone experts, they'd had all of the police and all the investigators, which there were 4 over the years. And the family had all looked at these records and said, you know, this is what we know. We know that the boyfriend had her phone for X amount of time and he made X amount of calls to these sex lines, and he did it from her phone and then he gave the phone back. And what I found when looking at it was that there was a little letter next to a couple of different calls that had an F on it. And when we looked up what meant in the Wayback Machine, we used that to look up basically what that code meant back then. It actually meant roaming. So it meant that the moment she supposedly left the room, the phone was roaming, but he stated that he stayed in the room. So that really kind of changes everything. It changes the whole story. We wouldn't have been able to find that had me and her sister not noticed it. And so many people looked at these records. So I am a firm believer that there are some people out there that are just nosy enough or might have a very unique background in something very specific that they can contribute and they can help. And I believe with the amount of information out there, whether it be through the media and proven true, which I want to point something out today, and I'm trying not to get political, but keep in mind, I was also a journalist on and off for 20 years. I've written a lot of pieces that involved a lot of investigation and a lot of fact checking. I also went to school for copy editing many years ago. One of the things that is different today than it was in, I'd say, the 90s and the early 2000s, I'd say pre 9/11 even, is pre 9/11, if it bleeds, it leads was not really a thing. There was ethics in journalism. There were ethics. There were a lot of ethics, and they were very found to this one specific, that's not the right word, but they were put in this parameter where you didn't show a photo of someone jumping out of a building. You didn't show crime scenes on the front of a newspaper. You might see some blurry stuff that looks like where they had a body under it, but you're not going to see anything super graphic. When 9/11 happened, there was a huge question in journalism about, was it okay to show the 9/11 jumper? And the second they did that on the front of the news, people started demanding more. And that's when If It Bleeds, It Leads took off. Not just in my opinion. I had a professor who wrote for the Wall Street Journal, George Getchow. He's an amazing man. And he even can attest to you, like, didn't see a lot of war footage pre 9/11. One of the
That's
reasons
another
this is
thing.
important is
That's another thing you can't say, by the way.
what?
It's 9/11. If you say that, I have it in a title of one of my videos, and it was reflections
real?
of that with Duty Ron and Phil Grimaldi talking about the day and first responding, and it was a tribute. Demonetized immediately. I appealed
Wow.
it. They will not overturn it. You cannot. That is like,
I'm gonna talk to
somebody
my
needs to
guy at
teach me.
YouTube.
No, it's
I'm
insane.
gonna talk to my guy at YouTube. They're not gonna take this down. I promise you. Yeah, no, that's not happening. We should
No,
be
you've done
allowed to,
too much
like, what?
work.
That's crazy.
You've done too
But
much
yeah,
work
I've done
on
too much work.
this.
You know what? Let's just call it demonetized as it is. Like, this is
Mhm.
like, that's ridiculous also. I'm gonna start a petition. But the
I
point in
may
all
start a
that was
class action, but we'll see where that goes.
something, a class action lawsuit from YouTubers against YouTube. Let's do it. No, they're definitely gonna take us down now.
Follow the money. Follow the
Follow the
money. Who's
money.
making money?
We're
Where's the
gonna
money
start
going?
another conspiracy I'm gonna have to look into.
Mm.
So the reason that's important is because today, fact checking, copy editing, verifying facts and only reporting facts is not really, in my opinion, as prevalent as it was in the 90s. Because in the 90s, once it went to print, that was it. You couldn't change it. You couldn't alter it. You couldn't tape the website down. And everybody calls those the Cronkite years, right? Because in news, when you said something, it was so, and it had to be fact. You couldn't give your opinion. Today, it is really hard to sift through all the opinion, the innuendo, the advertising. The amount of times I've had to say, is this a news report or is this an ad? Like, it's crazy because you'll be reading something reported as this supplement known to cure, let's spell out CANCER, just in case.
Yeah.
And then as you scroll down, you realize it's sponsored by this company that makes this medication and none of it has been approved. So, like, things today are very different. And because of that, it's very important that we do our own fact checking, which some people just chalk it up to let me go look up Snopes. And then some people don't trust Snopes because they're
Snopes.
owned by this media. And even though I make fun of it, it's kind of true. Like a lot of these fact checking companies are owned specifically by people who have an agenda. So I'm a firm believer in look it up yourself. And before you report it as news, make sure you're correct. So because of that and my crippling mental disorders, I do believe that I take way too much time in gathering information about cases, specifically serial offenders, let's say that. And I happen to have a lot of charts and graphs and a lot of information on them. And I think that, and look, what does Lady Prudence say? I like this.
She says, I was a
It was always
journalist in the 80s. It was always, if it bleeds, it leads. I also remember the Jason Blair scandal at the New York Times.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if it bleeds, it leads definitely came before 9/11. I agree to that, what she's saying. But
You're going
it
to say it
kind
again.
of,
How many times are you going to say it? How many times are you
it
going to say it?
mattered less. It mattered less, I think. Or it matters less now, or it mattered less then, I guess. Now, if it bleeds, it leads is like, it's almost like this one thing works in this algorithm, so let's all go try to do it. That we're very motivated by numbers. We're very motivated by clicks now. We're extremely motivated by advertising and what gets what gets viewers. It's almost like we all have our own. What was the old TV thing where they counted viewers? It's like that. Like we all have our own self-fulfilling feeling that we get when someone likes a status, right?
Mhm.
So I think that now we are all personally motivated, I think, to be eye-catching, to have popping like come here, come here. It's almost like we're all sign spinners. You know what I mean? Back then, I think that while numbers were important, I think that it was more about getting the facts straight. You could get awards for getting the facts right. If you were more accurate, people trusted you more. So there was more on the line. I think now it's more about who you just like. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like, oh, well, I like this person in the way they say things. I'm a firm believer you don't always have to like the news. It's the news. You know what I mean? It's just what happened. So anyway, I think because of how we live today and how technology is ever expanding, we have a lot more at our fingertips to talk smack and to spread rumors and to put out false things, put out false claims, play pretend, if you will. But I also think we have a lot more at our fingertips to prove what's real and what's not. And I think when it comes to older cases, it's a lot easier to find media that has definitive facts as opposed to declarations of this person is guilty. They were very careful. If you read old news articles pre 1999 to let me put it this way. They always said allegedly, like a lot. And there were very specific things you could print about a suspect or a person of interest. There were lines drawn. Now people will harass a teacher like in Idaho, that TikToker who, yeah, Nielsen ratings. Thank you. That TikToker who would say stuff like, this teacher did it and they were sleeping with a student, and they were just putting out all these outlandish claims, and now she's getting sued for it because none of it was true, but she reported it like it was true. She called herself the news. So like it's just so crazy today that so many mentally unhealthy people have this ability at their fingertips, but they also have the ability to check and see if what they're doing and saying is correct. And because of that, I am all about let's find out what's correct, especially when it comes to serial killings. Because whenever we say things like, this, let's go straight into it. Let's talk about Rex Heuermann because that's what brought us here is Gilgo, right?
Mhm.
When
But
we're
before,
talking about,
all
no,
right,
keep going.
you have to let me get a word in every now
Yeah,
and again.
you go. I'm talking too much.
Every now and again,
You
because
see what I mean?
you will go off and you will
I
leave this
will go
show.
off. I'm
But
going
she's
off.
here all night, folks. She's here all night. And if she forgot to tell you, she
All night.
also does stand-up comedy. So in addition to
Yeah, no, I
being
do.
a finder of missing people in her spare time out of the goodness of her heart, and how many viewers have reached out to you with cold cases of friends of theirs, relatives of theirs that you have helped?
A lot.
I
And we
know.
solved one. We
You
solved
did.
one. We had a lady, she had a missing friend from her church. She was very sad that nobody from the church seemed to be looking for him. And there were 2 missing persons reports put out, and we kind of snooped on, I think I could say this, we snooped a little bit on the hubby, who was a bit elusive, and then we agreed, let's just you should just drive by his house, see if he's there. I'm pretty sure he was okay. And so it's like, all right, well, good. Now you don't have to lose sleep at night. Your friend's fine.
Wow,
And it
so you
kind of like,
found okay, so you
yeah.
solved a couple of cases for viewers who just reached out to you just out of the goodness of your own heart, and that's how charitable you are, and that's what you do, and you love to do it, and that's so kind of you. You're a giver. Tommy,
Can I
Mrs.
tell
the
you?
Inquirer, I was gonna say the exact same thing when you started talking about,
Oh, fat boy.
the gossip rags, and a lot of them, a lot of them were sued. And there are a lot of
Yeah.
successful lawsuits against the National Enquirer and against Star Magazine and all those rags that would just have little to no complete and total disregard for the truth of whatever they were reporting on the cover.
And what
Oh,
was true, they would catch and kill. And we're finding out now that that was a thing for 3 decades, maybe even
mhm.
4. They were taking real stories, real reports of very serious things, and they were catching them and killing them. And Ronan Farrow wrote a
Mhm.
book about it that's very fascinating. But
Yeah.
yeah, that mm. And
All
can I
right.
tell you something
Yes, you
real
can.
quick before we get started on the Rex stuff? Okay. I have to tell you, I think she would be okay with me saying this, but one of the people who emailed me from your channel, love her to death. We text all the time now about a case that had to do with a classmate of hers, right? This is the wildest rabbit hole, bunny trail, whatever you call it, that I've been on in a long time. And the whole reason she asked me about it was because she thought, maybe this case might add something to do with Rex Heuermann. And as we started looking into it, there was a specific, let's say there was a specific escort agency involved, and she couldn't find anything about it. So basically, the lead was, let's find out as much as we can about this escort agency. Long story short, this ended up with Howard Stern. So we found it's an old audio recording. We had to get on the Wayback Archive of the
Tell
owner
everyone
of the
what the
agent.
Wayback Archive is for those who don't know about the Wayback Archive. You're about to learn something really cool.
Yeah, if you just go Google Wayback Machine,
Not right now, but
it's
later.
not right now, but later. It's an archive of the internet. So every time you take a screenshot or download something from a web page or stop at a page and spend a lot of time, if it gets a lot of traffic from a bulk amount of people, a thing called a web crawler, a code, will go across the internet and it will pick up these screenshots, these downloads, this activity, and it'll log it like a screenshot of that page. We also have millions of contributors who go into it, and you can actually physically upload any page or any bit of information or document that day, and you can put it in there kind of like how they do Wikipedia. And these contributions are just stills or data from specific web pages at a specific point in time. So basically, you can go in and you can type in a URL from the past. And even though it doesn't exist anymore because it's broken or down or just no longer a website, you can see exactly what it looked like in 2007 and sometimes 1999. You can use it on trail cam sites, basically any public website. It used to work on some MySpaces. I have yet to see a lot of social media that's encrypted that will pop up unless it's something really open. So you can even go on LiveJournal and put that in there. But then they started encrypting social media after those years. So mid 2000s and after, you can yes, hey Snazzy, we've been talking, yes. So basically it logs all these pages. So in this case, we went and we typed in this escort service, and there's been a guy, this blows my mind. There's a guy who listens to every Howard Stern, which we had even talked about in a live. We brought it up. Um, he listened to every Howard Stern ever, every hour, every minute of it, every day of his life, and he has blogged about it. And when he blogs it, he just gives you a basic rundown of what happened on the show that day. And in this blog on this date in like 1997, the specific date, he even puts the time at 8:17. Someone called into Howard Stern, and it was like Dirty Tuesdays or something where they tell dirty stories. And
Whip
it's
it
a
out
guy who ran
Wednesday.
yeah, something like that. He called in and he's like, I own an escort agency in this specific town, and this is what we have the girls do, and these are their ages, and there are no men working here but me, and I want to send some to Howard. And he keeps calling in. What's crazy is that's the only mention we could find of this escort agency, and it's the exact town, and this would have been the boss of the victim. So it's very fascinating that the only thing we could really learn about this agency from like the 90s, from like 94, and how it operated happened to be by listening to old episodes of this caller on the Howard Stern show. And
Wow.
the fact that that archived footage was even available was mind-blowing. And then there's a lot more to the case that I can't get into, but it's just the fact that any case from here took me to a Howard Stern archive and gave valuable information blew my mind. Like I couldn't handle it. I was like, this is so weird, because I even brought up we talked about Hank the serial killer calling in on Stern in our first live.
Yeah.
And I think that was the one where she emailed me, and then we started talking and it led to Stern. So what are
Bobo,
the
was
odds
that
of
the
that?
guy's name? People are saying Bobo.
It
Was
was
that his name?
Bob. Oh, they're talking about the clown or what?
I don't know.
I don't
Bobo
remember the
from the
clown.
Howard Stern show? 2 people said that. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I think he's talking about the clown, that
Oh.
that horrible clown that says terrible things and makes Gary cry. Yeah,
Oh.
that's
Oh.
another thing. I started listening to a lot of Howard Stern after that, so because I'm like, maybe he'll call back and we can learn more. But yeah, anyway, I thought that was weird. So you talk now, because
All right. Now, so we're gonna start off with is the Rex Heuermann, what we were calling on my other show, the the 80s cold cases that you and I had been talking about while I was preparing those shows, about whether or not we thought any of those could be related. And I know you have some graphics that you want to put up. So in whatever order you want to do that in, and tell us what you found when you went down the rabbit hole, let's start off with that.
Okay, before I put a graphic up, I'm gonna let's talk about Rex a little bit.
Wait,
Because
time out. Wait, hold on one second.
Mhm.
I can't put the captions on while we are live streaming. I can only put them on after the show ends, unless somebody else knows how I can put the captions on through YouTube Studio. I mean, I'm
I
on
think there is a
StreamYard.
30-second delay based on the chat. Like the chat pops up a little late, I've noticed when I'm watching you,
Yeah, but I
like
can't
when
put
I'm not
the
here.
closed captions on while we're live. I think
No.
it's only after.
I think they can, though.
Oh.
I think if they go to their little corkscrew looking thing,
Mm-hmm.
it might give that option.
Oh, so the person has to do it individually.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I
you,
can't
like
do it.
you as a viewer. I'm talking to you viewers, not Melanie right now.
Hello, viewer.
Hi, viewers. Go to your little, I hope it works. I can't really check it myself, but go to your little corkscrew looking thing for settings and pop it up and see if it gives you the CC option.
Yeah, it says it's
And then report
unavailable.
back.
So I don't know if there's any creators in here who know how I can do it on. Yeah, that's why I think it's only available after the stream ends. I don't know that there's
I think
anything that I
that
can
would
do
be
on my end.
amazing, though, that they like to do it so fast would fascinate me.
Oh,
They'd
prior
probably
to
get a
the
lot more.
start? Yeah. It says no captions while live. Thank you, Darlene Wolf, for Googling that for me. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Question answered.
All right.
Fact
So after the
obtained.
stream, I'll put them up.
All right. So before we get to some graphics, I want to talk about some new potential information that I found on Rex not on Rex, but that could lead to more info on Rex. And I assume maybe they've got people in the FBI who have tried this, but I don't know.
Hope so.
If you're someone who doesn't mind viewing Corn, which is
Wait, what'd you say?
YouTube
Corn?
Corn.
Corn? Yeah.
Corn. But
P.
minus C plus P, if that makes sense. Because we know don't want to say the word, even though we're freaking adults, YouTube. So basically, there are popular corn websites like UCorn and Cornhub. And on these corn websites, there are an abundant amount of videos from inside La Trapeze nightclub from the 90s until now.
Okay, let me talk about La Trapeze for 1 minute. So La Trapeze was a club in New York City. I think it was on 23rd Street, 26th Street, somewhere near Rex Heuermann's office, not far from Penn Station. And La Trapeze was a, quote, swingers club. Recently, John Ray, who is the attorney that's been representing Shannon Gilbert's family since she went missing in 2010, recently John Ray has discovered, or witnesses have come to him and have given him affidavits, and he did a press conference with our current, soon to be former Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison, in which one of the witnesses was a woman who claims that she met Rex Heuermann and his wife through an ad that they posted at La Trapeze, this swingers club in Manhattan. And she went with her boyfriend, who was a New York City police officer, and they picked up a woman in the city that we believe to be Karen Vergata, who was formerly known as Jane Doe number 7. Her remains were found in 1996. She was dismembered. Her legs were found washed up on Fire Island in 1996. The other remains were found sometime in 2010. I think a skull. Forgive me if I'm getting the parts wrong. But her identity was not determined until October of, I believe, 2022. And it came out after that. They did determine Karen Vergata's identity prior to her father's death, but it was not released into the public until sometime in 2023. Karen Vergata was allegedly picked up by this woman, this new witness, and her NYPD detective boyfriend, and brought to the home of Rex Heuermann in Massapequa Park, Long Island, where they were met by his wife, Asa Ellerup, and there was a swinger thing happening there. She claims in her affidavit that she and her NYPD detective boyfriend left Karen Vergata there. They left in a different car than they came in. When they left, Rex Heuermann was burning something in the backyard. It was February. It was Valentine's Day of 1996, which is the last time anyone in Karen Vergata's family heard from her. And she says that she and her NYPD detective boyfriend left Heuermann's home in a different car. They left Karen Vergata there. She said to her boyfriend, "I'm really nervous. Why are we leaving her there?" And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You know, I'm a cop. It's all good." Then she claims that they saw her running around the house without any clothes on. And she said something to her boyfriend, and he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. They're just playing a game." That is how La Trapeze comes into this Rex Heuermann story. And now I will let you go from there.
So La Trapeze, what was interesting with Heuermann is that there are different ways that you can advertise for swinging, and nowadays it would all be online typically. And we have to remember he wasn't caught until last year, or this past year. So the chances, in my opinion, of someone just completely stopping any sort of behavior, be it deviant or fetish wise, especially if there's somebody who tacks on violent offender on top of that, slim to none. There is a very good chance that there are possibly other bodies or other persons out there that went missing at his hands or died at his hands. And I do think it's very fascinating that he chose a club that is a swingers establishment that would typically one would expect to be very private type of environment, or maybe something where not just anybody can go. But the one that he picked actually has a pretty broad history. And after researching it a lot, I found that I don't even know if I should say this because this is not political. It's just a fact.
Say it in code. Say it in code if you're going to say it.
Oh, I'm going to. But Roger Stone and his wife once advertised, just like Rex supposedly advertised. And I say supposedly, but in the affidavit, is that what it was? It a deposition or an affidavit? A
No, it was
deposition,
a sworn affidavit that she swore
sworn
to. Yeah.
affidavit. Yeah, when they're discussing Rex, it's John Ray even said there were advertisements in the bathroom with advertising that they do come back to our house and we'll host. And what's interesting is that's also what Roger Stone and his wife did in the same spot, and it was reported in
Allegedly.
one of those old. No, there were pictures of it. Like, he was proud of it too. He was like,
Oh.
"Yeah, we did." Like, and it was in a, like, Star magazine back in the 90s. So, like, it's around the same time too. And
Mhm.
so I started thinking, like, how many other times are we gonna see La Trapeze in the media or find anything on it at all? And first couple of things you find out that people took their cameras in. And I'm not talking like today where, like, you can hide a camera, have it on your phone. They had those handheld ones that it's like, "Hey kids, hey family." Like,
The
people brought
camcorder
those in. The
with the
camcorder, the
with
old
the flip
school one.
out screen. Yeah.
Yeah, and the little, and some of them just, it's like Blair Witch meets Corn.
Yeah.
And it's all types of people. So it feels legitimate. And on some of them, like, you can't really find the EXIF data since some of them are on specific sites, but there are archives of it elsewhere on the internet where you can pull it and see that it goes very far back. I'm talking like late 90s. People uploaded data from older videos than that. And some of them, I believe the timestamps are edited out, but you can still see it in certain frames. And it's fascinating because these are people of all shapes and sizes, and it seems very busy, and they're wearing like eyes wide shut masks. But it's just so strange to me, like, this is where he went. So are there people looking at this footage? I mean, I don't want to do it. What little I saw, I was like, I'm good. But I think that there's something there. There could be something there, especially because one of the things I noticed is while their eyes and face are covered, their tattoos are not. And you see a lot of the Playboy bunnies, but there's a lot
Wow.
of tattoos that I would pause it and be like, could this be peaches? You know what I mean? Things like that. And I do wonder, do they have people looking for missing women or women that are already murdered,
Yeah.
even not just there, but anywhere, at this club if he was known to frequent it. I do notice that in quite a few of them, a lot of the men are cut out. You just see legs, but I do think that there's something to the footwear. Like, that tends to be a big giver in a lot of situations involving circumstantial evidence collection. I do think that there are specific things in these videos that could be looked at with a forensic lens to find out if there were missing persons that fit a description. Should someone be wearing, I don't know, like in Zodiac, he had wing walker shoes. Everybody knew that. In Jean Bonnet, they know exactly what type of footwear it was. It was one of those logging trail shoes, hiking boots.
Oh,
I
so
Mhm.
we're clear here because this is like hidden cam video of people, swinging inside La
I wouldn't
Trapeze.
say hidden. Like, they
Well, maybe
know.
they knew the camera was
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
but they are butt naked except for shoes. Is that what you're saying?
Some of
That's
them are.
crazy.
I mean, it's I can't say as a whole
It's
because there's a
funny.
lot of some people are in weird Grecian costumes, but there's people doing corn at the
Wow.
corn place.
With
A
shoes
lot of
on though.
different age
Yeah.
groups. Yeah, so some of them have masks, some of them don't. Some of them should, but it's
Some
kind of
of them
crazy how
should.
much. Yeah, some of them I
So,
was like,
all
dang,
right.
put a
So
mask on.
basically, somebody could go through all of that old footage from La
Sure.
Trapeze and maybe able to solve something here.
Yeah, I'm not saying there is something there, but there could
Right.
be, especially the amount of people, especially back then, got I don't want to say it, but they got TRAMP stamps was the big thing,
Lower
and
back
specific.
tattoos.
And then
Mhm.
you know, they would get the Playboy bunny. Like, there were very specific tattoos for that time for I just read Tommy's comment.
Yeah.
It's Pornhub, bud. Uh Also, another thing is, okay, I was looking at swingers ads because, like I said, he was caught, what was it, this past year, right? So the chances of him obviously continuing the lifestyle with or without Asa, the likelihood of him maybe committing more nefarious crimes, probably pretty good. Who knows? But I did want to look through some swingers ads to see specifically Massapequa specific and then branch out to Long Island, because I always think you should start direct and branch out, or you can do the funnel method like with profiling. But I think that when we know such specific facts, especially when we know they are facts because they are in a search warrant,
Mhm.
or an affidavit, those are things that we can glean a lot from, especially the digital trail. So I started looking at classifieds ads to see if there was anything online recently in the last decade involving them as a couple. And I think that the most important thing people should remember is hit every single person, in my opinion, who commits a crime of this nature, especially serial killers, they always have like one unique factor or one unique trait, either about the crime or about themselves. Rex's, I think, is that he's insanely tall. Like, he's very tall. For, I think there's, out of all the serial killers, from what I was researching, there's maybe only like 4 that are in that height range. So he's very, very tall. He's ogre-like. He's got a distinct look about him. He also seems to be a bit OCD. He keeps the same job for all these years. He lives in the same house for all these years. He's driven the same make and model of truck for all these years. His haircut hasn't seemed to change. His every picture you see of him, he's, you know, dressed the same. It's very fascinating to me, but it makes me think, despite being a hoarder, even if you look at his office and that footage with the interview, it's all very clean. I think that his
One
home is
second.
a
Melissa,
mess.
he's somewhere between 6'4" and 6'6". There's been
I
different
thought it was
reports.
6'6" and 6'7".
Yeah, I think he's closer to 6'6". I've seen
Yeah,
him.
I
I've
think
been
he's
in court. He
6'6".
looked right at me. Crazy, chilling.
He's yeah, for a serial killer, very tall.
He's been described as an
But
ogre. Looks like an ogre.
And one thing about the swingers ads that I thought was interesting is on almost any swingers forum, you have to put your height and weight, because some people, they'll even put like no fatties. They'll be mean. And some people will be like, I only want someone who's big, or like, if it's guys, I'm into bears, you know? So people are very specific. So they always put height, weight, whether it's a male and female partnership or a male and male partnership, that you go into those specifics. So pretty easy to just kind of go in there and use the feature where you can put in specifics in advanced search and search for people who are 6'5" to 6'8", over 200 pounds. And when you do that, you get some profiles, some little ads that really do pretty much line up with him perfectly. And I hope that they're looking at that. But I think that that's very interesting. Like, especially when you look at the partner description, it also fits her. But there's some that look like the same user, but they have a different partner description. It'll be someone much younger. And I thought that was interesting. It made me wonder, does he go to these sites and maybe post swingers ads for him and a potential escort, and then seek out that escort, i.e., someone who's shorter, someone who's blonde, you know what I mean? Someone who is 120 pounds. You know, he can post the ad and arrange the date and then worry about getting the SW later, if that makes sense.
Right. Let me
Um,
just break for 1 second because
mhm,
Callie girl, thank you. Yeah, the super chats are working. They come up on my end. I don't know why you're not seeing them on your end. So let me just get to a couple of these now. Thank you, Snazzy Trinkets Jewelry, for your super chat. So glad you're feeling better, Oblivious. She says,
thank you.
Snazzy Trinkets again. Thank you so much again for coming in with the super chat. I reached out to her. Thank you to your for my referral to you. Thank you. Oblivious, Mozzie, thank you for becoming a new member. And Christy A, thanks for being a member for 2 months. Christy, thank you so much for your generous super sticker. You do that so often, and I do appreciate your generosity. so very much. That is everything that is in here for now. The other ones I already addressed. So let us go on from there. Somebody also asked, so the wife knew. We don't know what the wife knew, but according to this witness, the wife did know about the lifestyle, the swinging
Yeah,
lifestyle.
she knew about the
She
lifestyle.
apparently she did not take part in whatever relations went on that evening. And it had been surmised by this witness that Asa did not want to have relations with this woman because the witness herself is African American. She thought maybe Asa was racist, but it turns out, as people have recently reported, that she may have been pregnant at the time, Asa, and that maybe perhaps that's why she did not have relations with the witness, but also the cop and I think Rex went off together. So it is also known, we think that Rex is also bisexual. So there's another interesting tidbit. Scott asks, Oblivious, did you find Rex at the swingers clubs near his home? There were 2 within 10 minutes of him in Massapequa Park.
I didn't I didn't really find anyone that I was like, oh, this is Rex, but I found people who fit his profile for sure. And there's also there's an old, well, I don't even know if it's still open. I should check, but there's a strip club, and I think Babylon maybe.
They're
That
everywhere.
I think so. I kept reading old reports on a certain Mr. Burke about
Jimmy Burke?
his,
We can say
yeah,
his
about
name.
old Jim Burke. Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, things that he did according to his coworkers and according to reports online that I can't possibly confirm. I don't know if anybody could. He would probably have to openly admit to them, but about some of his behavior in these clubs, which allegedly involved choking women and throwing them on the ground in front of people. And I kept seeing that club come up in relation to local town message boards that I've been trolling with people just to see what the rumor is, because I'm one of those people. I like to know the news, but I also like to know the rumor because there are so many cases where the rumor ends up being the truth. And especially in places with corrupt law enforcement, that tends to be where you have to go because, the media doesn't really get cooperation, if you will, and they can't really report rumor as flagrantly. So it's a situation where I kind of like to balance it. And I can say that it's very fascinating how many times this particular strip club was mentioned in old reports and how many times people have made mention in random posts about seeing a guy that looked like Rex there. And I'm also very interested right now in trying to see if there's a link between them because everybody swears up and down like Jimmy must have known Rex and Rex must have known Jimmy. And I'm like, okay, I see everyone accusing them of this, but is there any fact to it whatsoever? And can we find that? So that's been another obsession. Have I yet? No. Have I found some suspicious posts and content? Sure, totally. Yeah, like weird stuff, but I can't say definitively if it's him. Have I checked his IP against theirs? No, not yet. I should, but maybe I'll try that. I did check
Yeah.
some IP addresses though of some haters and found out some fascinating stuff we're not going to get into.
Wait, hold on.
But
I don't know, Cal. I don't know why anything's not working. YouTube has been glitching so much lately for everybody. So I don't know. I can't help you. I was trying to do it too. I was trying to give some memberships on my own thing and it's not letting me. So thanks, YouTube. Happy holidays. All
no
right. So
sabotaging.
moving on from those
Okay. So that's the Rex stuff. Okay.
ads on Rex. Okay, I'll full screen you again.
I compiled some. Ooh, I do want Mel to come back to get her reaction to some of this, but I'm sure she'll hear it. Okay, I want to see your reaction to some of these. I have some crazy facts in true crime that I wanted to show you guys before we get into all of this because well, we're already in it. But basically, one of the things that I see that I wanted to come on and talk about was people saying stuff like, and we've all been guilty of it, but what are the chances that there are 2 serial killers dumping on this same beach?
I say that all the time.
You say it all the time. I've heard so
I
many
do.
people say it. What are the chances of this, that, and the other? And I love figuring out what those chances are. So that's what I've been trying to do. And as you can see, I easily get distracted. And I happen to also have a whole bunch of random weird little fact bombs I wanted to share with you guys today, because I want you to see that the chances on a lot of things happening are very good when it comes to serial killings and crime, and just how safe we are is very relative to specific circumstances. So I thought it would be interesting to share some of these with you, and I want to get your thoughts, your feedback.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm ready.
So people like to say, what are the chances of, same dumping ground? Okay, well, let me ask you this. What are the chances of 3 serial killers with similar MOs, similar dumping ground areas relative to state? They have the same, let's just say this, same victim, same type of crime, same profile on all ends, all 3 of them working within 2 to 10 blocks of each other for a number of years. 2 of the 3 working in the same building for a number of years, and all of them being connected to New York and doing the same crime, pretty much. What are the chances of that happening? They're insane
Yeah,
because
Slim
they've
and
already
done. And Slim got on the
it,
bus.
it's already happened. In
Oh,
October of 1966, Times Square killer Richard Cottingham, you remember him, the torso killer?
I was
He was known for, first of all, he was going until the 80s, okay?
okay. Wait, you
So this
broke up.
guy was
So
known.
hold on, you broke up. So
Oh,
let's talk about him again. Richard
okay.
Cottingham.
Yes. So Richard Cottingham was pretty much the worst of the worst, right? Like, this guy had multiple different means of killing, but he would do pretty much everything. He would do the R word, he would murder, strangle, he would torture, he would mutilate bodies, and he focused on sex workers. He also assaulted, he also kidnapped, he did everything. And he was flagrant about it. He did it a lot. He was pretty much one of the worst serial killers, in my opinion, of all time, next to like Bittaker and Norris. Like, he was a horrible human being. So he was active in
Okay, wait.
Times Square area,
Yeah. What year?
specifically from 1967 until 1980 that we know of. He did get put in jail after that. But the problem is, he was working, well, I shouldn't say problem. Here's what's weird. He was working for Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, right? Until his arrest. So this whole time he's working there. Guess who else worked with him, who was a child molester, serial killer, and he lived in New York at the time under the name John Berger? Guess who?
Son of Sam.
Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. Do you remember him?
Oh, somebody just mentioned him the other night in the stream.
He was on dating shows. He was on TV, and he was just like Edward Wayne Edwards, just like there was another guy in California who was on dating shows. This guy, Rodney Alcala, worked in the same building as the Times Square killer, Richard Cottingham. Now, this specific building happened to also be just 10 blocks away from where Rex Heuermann would make his phone calls and where he'd pick up his first victim. Simultaneously, Rex, if you go by the date he started working there, the time that Alcala was there under his name, and the time that Cottingham was there just the year before his arrest, one could assume that these 3 were overlapping. And what's fascinating is they all committed very similar crimes on prostitutes, and they all picked them up in the same area, and they all dumped them and staged them in very similar fashions.
Wait, so are you saying that the 3 are Richard Cottingham, Rodney Alcala, and Rex?
And Rex, Rex is a couple of years after. But what's fascinating is that they're in the same radius.
Wow.
They're picking up women who, if let's say, okay, look,
Times
there's
Square
a
was
couple
different back in the day.
yeah, there's a couple of sex workers who have done interviews online through a couple of these I can't remember the name of it, but it's a Facebook series where they interview people from the streets. And there are women who have been on the streets doing sex work in New York since 1978 who are still active to this day. Like, elderly women who are still doing sex work there. And they have survived, if you think about it, they have survived 3 serial killers, all who
Wow.
literally were known for very similar crimes, strangulation, threatening with guns, some of them dismembered in addition. But it's very strange that Alcala and Cottingham worked in the same building.
That's
And then
insane.
Rex comes along just a few years later. And it blows my mind. And I thought that was very fascinating. Now, here's another one. We've got an additional one to add in there. There are 3 serial killers in New York who, in addition to these 2, right? Or these 3, I guess. So it would be 4. Sorry, 4. Schulman committed almost parallel crimes. They were very similar victims, MO, dumping style, location. The only thing that differed with Robert Schulman is well, I shouldn't say differed because Cottingham did drugs, but Schulman was a known crack addict. He had his brother helping him dismember and dump the women. He simultaneously used his brother's car, and he would pour calcium carbonate on the bodies, basically like Arm and Hammer on the bodies. Now, what's interesting is he also picked up the same profile of victim in the same area, in addition to other kills he had. And he did that. Yes, it's the Underbelly Street People video series, the
Mhm.
White Underbelly. That's the one. So
Okay. Wait, what's
Schulman,
Schulman's first name?
this is, hold on, let me pull up. I also have
I want to say
him,
Richard
his
Schulman, but I
brother's
think
Barry.
I might know a
His
Richard
brother's
Schulman.
Barry, and he's Robert. So
Oh.
what's interesting about him is his brother took a plea deal and ended up only being sentenced to 2 years while he was sentenced to death. So that was in 99, and Barry would be out by now. In fact, he would have been out this whole time. And here's the thing. He never was really, I guess, questioned or put on the stand about whether or not he actually or accused even of taking part in the murder. His was tampering with a corpse and discarding of evidence, which they believe would have definitely included dismembering, because he did have prints on the bags. So what's fascinating is that this person who definitely helped dismember sex workers from the exact same area that the other 3 were picking up sex workers at different points in time, like literally blocks from each other. This guy was also picking them up, and in Jamaica, Queens. He focused on areas kind of around his house, but he also would troll for people. Like, he would cruise. He's a guy that basically, when he got caught, his brother should have, everybody was outraged. His brother should have gone to prison with him for life, and that guy's been out. So I definitely include him in a list of suspects. Yes, he did work for the post. That's another thing. Like, look at these people's jobs. He's a postal worker, and then at the same time, we had Arthur Shawcross. He killed 17 women, similar manner and style. He focused on prostitutes, but he also had other innocents. He would kidnap, rape, strangle. I'm sorry,
I
frig.
think we're far past it now.
Yeah, grape. Okay. Yeah,
Grape.
he
Grape. Okay. All right. I'll go with that.
basically, I'm going off on a tangent. We're gonna get to all that in a minute, but my point is, like, when people say what are the odds of this being a dumping ground, I'm gonna tell you the odds straight up. The odds are 1 in 30. Like, there are 30 serial killers that were potentially active in the same area, and by potentially I mean they dumped around or near. They had a similar MO. They had something about their crime that was similar to the women on Gilgo Beach that keeps them from being necessarily ruled out. We've got 30 of them. Now, only, let me see up here, we get to right there. So of those 30, 14 to 30, the last half, those are the ones that are definitely in CODIS. Now, the rest were caught before DNA was collected through CODIS. Whether or not their profile was ever even examined against the victims, because a lot of these guys, like Rifkin, were literally caught red-handed. They had a body in their vehicle or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Isn't that how he got caught? He had a body in his trunk or
Yeah,
in
he
his
had a
car.
body in his trunk. And by the way, when I look at dismemberments, especially in the crimes you were talking about, it blows my mind how many there were in Long Island. just the ones that I found, and I'm not even done looking, I found 47 different active killers who dismembered.
Wow.
47. Serial killers of that, there were 14 who would have been available to do it at that time in that area. We also have to keep in mind that there are traveling killers, truckers, Israel Keys. We had Robert Ben Rhodes. Then we've got Samuel Little, who confessed to bodies in New York. All of these guys
No relation.
confessed to having bodies. Yeah, no relation.
Ramirez?
They all.
Marianne says Ramirez. Is that one?
Ramirez wouldn't have been active in New York at the time. I don't think he ever had. He also was very poor and never really left El Paso or California area, like that Southwest area, with a vehicle. So I wouldn't count him. That's another thing, is people have to remember we need means. And a lot of people will go, well, what about this guy? But then if you go and you look up their age, they're 14. Well, he could have dismembered them at 14 and then just changed his MO. Serial killers, they would be part of the 0.0001% who devolve. It's very rare. It's very rare to start out that extreme. And typically, if you do something that extreme, it's to an animal. Typically, if they were to do something that extreme, they likely have a psychotic episode, or it's something brought on by rage or type of rage killing. And their method might differ every time. And this is just based on historical behavioral analysis. I thought it was very fascinating, the amount of killers who point the bodies in different directions. Like some of them go facing east, facing north.
Eastbound Strangler.
Eastbound Strangler. A lot of them, it has to do with being near water. That's another thing, is Shawcross killed 17 people and dumped them all along the Genesee River in New York. And he did it in a way that perfectly describes one of the girl victims that you talked about, who I believe it was, hold on, I have her name right here. Kelly, where is it? Let me pull it up. She was one of the Islip cases. Here we go. The one that was in the pit. Was it Laura Parker? She had a cardboard box on top of her, right? So what's fascinating is Shawcross dumped a body under a bush the exact same way. But the problem with that is when you actually look at her case, which we'll get to that in a minute, there's some profiling things that kind of tell you that it couldn't have been him. You know what I mean? So we also have to keep in mind, if they have their DNA and they have the DNA from the victim, it gets ran against CODIS. The chances that any of the people on any of these lists, if there was DNA on them, the chances that they belong to Rex's victim pool are slim to none. And I'm going to tell you why. I think, and this is based on what my professor told me, he was a behavioral analysis unit student. He worked in the FBI. He's been a Texas Ranger. And he explained to me that when you have a serial killer that fits anything that has to do with your body, your agency can run the DNA against CODIS if you have DNA from your specific case, right? So all these cases in the area, if the specific profile was run against Rex, or Rex was run against all of CODIS, it's going to tell you exactly who he fits. It's not like genetic genealogy where you have to narrow it down.
His DNA won't go into CODIS until there's a conviction in New York. So his DNA will not go into CODIS. They can't run his DNA for anything right now. Yep.
Has he had any drunk driving? I can't remember if he was one of them.
No, his brother did. His brother, who has a very similar physical description to him.
But that's in South Carolina, right?
The drunk driving was in New York, but it was in the 80s. So,
well, here's what trips me out. I found a lot of different news reports where the police have openly said, we've ruled him out of this case. And in 2 of them, they said DNA. So that makes me think they've ran it somehow. If they can't legally do it yet, then that means they likely ran Greg's. I mean, he had multiple drunk driving. They definitely took his blood for that accident. So
he went to jail for that.
Yeah, I do think that they would know. I do think that they've already ruled him out of the Atlantic City, New Jersey, and they've cited DNA. So that makes me say, okay, somehow they know. You know what I mean? They did collect his DNA from a cup, though, right?
They
And they
did.
ran it
And the
against
pizza
CODIS
crust.
already to determine that he matched those cases, right?
No, there was a familial match. They had
Oh,
hairs
yeah,
on
yeah.
the Gilgo 4, and then they matched that with the familial DNA that they got from the garbage can at the house. They did like a dumpster dive, and that's how they found it out that it was Asa's hair, and then, or Asa. And then they got his DNA off the pizza crust. And then they did the buccal swab when they got a court order to do it, and they all matched his
So when
DNA
they
from the
did
pizza
the
crust.
buccal swab, they only ran it against those. That's
Yeah.
interesting. It's weird because they said that we're having people reach out from all over with other cases.
Mhm.
It makes me wonder if they got his DNA, if maybe like, because you know how you can pick it up like they did with the pizza crust.
Mhm.
Makes me wonder if there was other, because they've ruled him out. And I mean, how else would you? They have the DNA and they've ruled him out with DNA, and they ruled out guys who are involved in the case, other than 2 that they should have, but they couldn't get their DNA. That knew multiple victims in the Atlantic City ones.
Mhm.
And they have yet to collect DNA and run those. So either way, regardless, once he gets convicted, when they run him through CODIS, we're gonna know. But I do think that if they do have DNA for him specifically, that they are available to run through CODIS, or if maybe, I wonder if other states outside of New York, because of the differing laws, I do wonder if they do have his brothers, right, Mary? So that's what I'm wondering, is I'm wondering if they're using his brothers to run it against other cases, because there are
Mhm.
multiple cases that have popped up in the news besides Atlantic City where they've said they've ruled him out.
Hmm.
And when you cite DNA, it's like, well, how do you do this? Oh, sorry,
Wow,
I
look at
was
this one.
just,
The first DNA
yeah.
case in Colorado? Is that what you're saying? Wait, I don't know why I feel the need to share this, but abusive ex was ran in CODIS, and he turned out to be the first DNA case in Colorado for
Was that like 94? Well, I'm not gonna make you
thank God I got
respond,
away with my
but
life. Yeah, thank God you
thank
did,
God.
really.
That's crazy. Whew. I'm so glad. I wonder
Thank
if
you, Snazzy.
lived in Charlotte, Virginia, thoughts on it.
Brother Craig has lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, New Jersey, New York, and Virginia. Now lives in South Carolina. I have thoughts on the brother, but I will bite my tongue for now. I mean, very similar physical description. There are very few photographs of him out there. I found one photograph on the web. I don't know if you've found any more, but there was one of him and he's behind a car windshield. It's very difficult to see, but I understand that he's around the same height, around the same physical build. Thank you, K Music Taylor, for your super sticker. That's so sweet of you. Lily says it was in 1988. That's interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting. All right. Anyway,
Oh,
sorry
when
to
he
take you off
committed it?
track.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So, anyways, back to weird true crime facts. Okay. So, did you know that there are 2 serial killers that are related? Henry Lee Lucas from Texas was cousins with Bobby Joe Long. What are the odds of that? They did not hang out. They didn't commit any crimes together. Henry Lee Lucas is one of the worst serial killers in Texas history, and Bobby Joe Long was one of the worst serial killers in Florida history. And they had very similar MOs and victim profiles, with several murders. And I mean, Bobby Joe Long and Henry Lee Lucas both started off as R words, you know what I mean? I'm not
Right.
gonna spell it. Grapeists. And
Great.
I just think that's crazy. Like, you've got 2 serial killers who
That
are
are related.
cousins,
Well, maybe
like,
there's a
that are
genetic defect there that turns them evil, maybe
that's
it's
what I'm saying.
more nature than nurture or, I mean,
And Bobby Joe Long operated in, the Carolinas, possibly in Virginia, but definitely in Florida. That's what he got in trouble for. And then Henry Lee Lucas was kind of everywhere in the Texas area. And on that note, what are the odds that 2 brothers would exist, with one growing up to be a serial killer, the other a child being kidnapped by a serial rapist and murderer, and then escaping after years in captivity to save a young boy? So you've got a child who gets kidnapped. He's literally one of the milk carton kids in the 70s. He escapes his kidnapper and saves another little boy who is going to be a victim while in captivity, is returned home, which is so rare. And then his older brother later stated that he was so jealous of the attention that his little brother got, that he went off to be the Yosemite Park serial killer Cary Stayner. So you've got a
Wow. So
victim.
it could be genetic or it could be a trauma. I mean, it's very common that children who are SA'd as children go on to become also SAers
Well, no.
or CSAers. I mean,
But that's the thing is
so I could see like the killing, the violence, if
but you
that's
have
your
one brother
normal.
who's a victim who saved another victim, and then
Yeah.
you have his brother who is a serial killer
Wow. Oh, I
because
thought you
he
meant the
was
young kid grew
jealous.
up to be one.
No,
Okay.
the young kid grew up, I think he died in a car accident. It was very tragic and sad. This
Wait, hold on.
brother
You gotta look at this one. Yeah. Go on.
Okay, that's enough.
Is
First
that
of
not
all,
true? I don't know anything about that.
so he's talking about Henry Lee Lucas actually did serial kill. He was found to actually recently orange socks, that was him, and DNA connected them. It wasn't just any reason they put him in prison forever. This guy definitely serial killed. They connected his hairs, they connected his bodily fluids, and they connected his DNA to multiple cases. In Williamson County, Texas, however, while he was awaiting one of his trials, he false confessed, and so did Tommy Linsells, to multiple cases. And the reason he did it was so that Wilco could close their cases. And in exchange for his false confession, these officers, including at the time Sheriff Chody, who is now in jail for other crimes, he at the time was a bailiff there. And he was there while they were taking these false confessions. And in exchange, Henry Lee Lucas would get free time out or he'd get a Dr. Pepper. And then it became he was allowed to roam the jail and do whatever he wanted and was kind of beloved. Now, all of those police ended up getting in trouble later. They got fired. They eventually got indicted. Some of them were forced to reopen those cases. Thank goodness. But that is something that he did do. He did false confess to multiple cases. However, he also committed a ton of murders, multiple ones which were tied directly to his gun. There were witnesses and a victim survived. So he was a serial killer. He killed a lot of people, but he was also a serial killer who went on to falsely confess to over 20 murders and destroy the lives of victims' families who thought that their loved one died at his hands. And now they have to go through this whole process of regrieving all over again. So while he was a scumbag and while he did lie, he was also very much a serial killer. And that's not even the fact I stated. I stated that he was Bobby Joe Long's cousin, which is absolutely true. Anyway,
Wow. All right, hold on. Let me just address Darlene. You worked in Kings Park Psychiatric Center as a mental hygiene therapy aide and worked with a few. That is very interesting because that is right here on Long Island. And that is a really, really, really creepy place because when they shut down the psych center, they just let all the patients out onto the street. Some of them are still out here living on the street. So hello, uncivilized raid. Welcome, everyone. Welcome.
So here's another fun quickie. Okay. There are more registered sex offenders in my neighborhood, which is 2 miles in my zip code, than exist in all of Manhattan.
Okay, wait, you say that again?
Where I live, my zip code.
And you live in Texas somewhere.
In Texas, in a city, in my small neighborhood, there are more sex offenders than exist in all of Manhattan. Registered sex offenders. That is insane. And when you look at Manhattan compared to a lot of other places, including smaller cities and even bigger towns, if you will, there are more sex offenders pretty much everywhere than in all of Manhattan, which blows my mind. Like,
do you have no schools there? Is that why? Because they can't live near a school, so they all go to a place where there's no schools.
Like, I can't even up the road.
What do you attribute
we have
that
a school right up the road? It's literally you can go up and look and see how many. You can go to watchdog sites and it shows you all the registered sex offenders. Now, I went to the one through our government website and said, how many sex offenders exist in my neighborhood, right? Number pops up. I'm like, wow, that's a lot. I'm scared. You can see where they live, the address that's registered to them, everything. The night that you did the live where you were talking about the woman who went in the garbage chute, that night when I was first thing I do when I see woman dead nefarious, I look up sex offenders. It's just no matter what, just double check, you know?
Yeah.
When I looked at the whole island of Manhattan, it was less than my neighborhood.
That's insane. Here's
There's
what
not a
Scott
lot
says.
there.
Scott, 25 years on the job, retired law enforcement, says that's because of the different charges and rules for registering.
And you were talking about that the other day, and thank you, Scott, for bringing that up. Remember, Melanie, you were talking about how they basically the way that they deal 512 girl, the way that they deal with the specific sex offenses and what's considered a sex offense and who's allowed to be on the registry is so different there. And you know what's interesting? In Louisiana, if you go to the bathroom, if you pee on the side of the road, or if you get caught using the restroom anywhere in public, like in Texas, we say pop a squat. You know what I mean? Just hop out, pop a squat. It's a 7-hour road trip. There's no bathrooms, honey. Like you just go and you hide yourself and you go real quick and you jump back in the car. If you do that in Louisiana, you have to register as a sex offender.
Wow.
So a sex offender in Louisiana and a sex offender in New York have very different standards, if you will.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't look up sex offenders in your
Don't look
neighborhood.
it up. Don't look it up. You can't unsee it. And then this is great too.
And I just want to give you perspective on that, because if it has to do with what is considered a sex offense, that's something that you should look at where you're moving. You know what I mean? Because if you're not required to register as a sex offender despite committing a sex offense, that might be a place to reconsider maybe moving to. You know what I mean? That's very important. But I thought that data was just fascinating.
That is incredible. That is incredible. You might want to move. That's all I'm saying. Maybe you want to move.
Another weird one. This has to do with one of the victims you brought up last week, Jacqueline Martorella in 1985. First thing I noticed about her case, she was on her way to work at a Burger King, right?
Yep.
There are a lot of different cases where women are on their way to work at a Burger King or a Dairy Queen, and they end up abducted and or murdered. And I thought, where have I seen this before? And I remembered this article I clipped a long time ago when I was looking at New Jersey serial killers for a school thing. And it was Richard Begenwald. He's a serial killer from New Jersey. He was active until 82 or 83. It was a special note in quite a few news articles and in some of his court records that he liked to scout for women from Burger King parking lots. Like, wow. He liked Burger King, and he also focused on one that had a school in front of it. And he would try to dump either near a golf course in a wooded area or behind said Burger King. And I thought the Burger King connection was very interesting because it was mentioned in one where his victim got away and survived, and then in one where they found a body. And I thought it was interesting that Martorella was actually walking to a Burger King, which I believe was, it's not that far away, believe it or not.
It was March 26th of 1985. Jacqueline Martorella, 19 years old. She was from Oceanside, Long Island. She went to Oceanside High School. She was walking, she was on a 10-minute walk to her job at Burger King on Long Beach Road. She was supposed to be there at 8 p.m., but she never arrived. Guess where her body was found.
This guy lived in New Jersey, but he was said to stalk other surrounding states, but he was busted for crimes in New Jersey. I thought it was interesting that they mentioned multiple times that he liked to chill in Burger King parking lots. And so I immediately was like, oh, maybe there's a connection. But then you look at the dates.
Oh, you just froze up. You just froze up. I lost you. Can you guys still see me? All right, maybe you got to go out and come back in. You're frozen.
3. Oop.
She froze. All right, she's going to come back. Jacqueline Martorella, to refresh your recollection, was found on the grounds of Woodmere Country Club golf course. Strangled with a wire or a rope in a swampy marsh with 10-foot high reeds. and she was found a month later badly decomposed. If you remember, we went over the 4 young teenage girls who went missing in the same year, all around that same area. There was, I think 2 from Oceanside, 1 from Lindenhurst. 2 of them hung out at Hot Skates. Jacqueline Martorella was one of the girls who hung out at Hot Skates, and Kelly Morrissey went missing first. I think Kelly Morrissey never was found. And originally, when the police found the body of Jacqueline Martorella on the Woodmere Country Club golf course, they were checking to see if it was Kelly Morrissey. Kelly Morrissey was 15 from Lynbrook. She was a 10th grader. She has never been found. And Laura Parker was the first of the 4 to go missing. She was from Lindenhurst. And then I believe Teresa Fusco was the 4th. She was also of Lynbrook. She also actually worked at Hot Skates roller rink. So there was that whole Hot Skates connection. We got to wait for Oblivious to come back. Hello, Sharon, and thank you so much for gifting memberships. I guess that is working. And Snazzy Trinkets, thank you so much for gifting memberships. And Rochella, thank you for gifting a membership. I guess it finally did work. It wasn't working on my iPhone, so I don't know. It's really, really, really crazy. This whole YouTube glitchy nonsense. Joan Byer, thank you so much for your super sticker. All right, Oblivious, I see you. You're coming back.
Hey, am I working now?
You're working now. Oh, it's better now. It was a little glitchy before.
Yeah, yours was glitching too, but I think it has to do with our weather, I swear. Okay.
Yeah, bad weather in Texas.
Okay, so I have
come back
again. Am I glitching again? What is happening?
Nope. I just was talking about Jacqueline Martorella, how her body was actually found at the Woodmere Country Club golf course, and she hung out at Hot Skates, and she was strangled. So you were saying you thought it was related to that guy with the Burger King MO, and then you stopped there,
And I want to talk about golf, actually. Let's talk about golf, because Burger King MO guy, it would have been 83 when he would have been done. So I started looking at anybody that had anything to do with golf. And if you know anything about Mr. Joel Rifkin, you remember him?
Oh, yeah. Another Long Island SK.
Yeah. So
Pride and Joy.
He probably had the most in common with like Cottingham, and basically he was a guy who dismembered. He focused on sex workers. His whole thing was golf courses. He loved dumping bodies on New Jersey golf courses. He left one, and that's another thing, is he would dismember and he would leave parts on different courses. He killed Heidi Balk, and he removed her teeth and her fingertips. That's another thing he loved to do. No, not Joel Rifkin from Seinfeld. Different.
I know. I was laughing at that, not the fingertips part of your conversation.
But he was actually talking about Joel Rifkin in that episode.
I remember. It was somebody who had the name Joel Rifkin, but it wasn't the Joel Rifkin. Yeah.
So this guy, his thing was he was a big loser. I'm just gonna say it. Sorry if I offend anyone.
Okay.
This guy was a big
offend anybody.
Yeah. So he lived with his mommy and daddy. Basically, his bedroom looked like a 15-year-old Roblox streamer. Like, it was just trash everywhere. It was disgusting.
Except
he
Roblox
had like
old.
Yeah, except it didn't. Yeah, but he imagine the filthiest teenager's room, like stuff everywhere. He was also a collector of trophies. He took a lot of things off his victims, not just one. So that's kind of, yes, we're going to get there. Joel Rifkin, just like Cottingham, kind of did a little bit of everything. When he got caught, he had smashed his truck with a victim in the back. He also wrapped up in burlap. He separated and dismembered and put in trash bags. He basically fits the MO for so many of the crimes that you brought up last week, but he also fits the MO for so many that are currently on Gilgo, but he just wasn't operating at the time. And it's very fascinating that there's, in my list, people who match his MO. He's got 14 that operated at the same time as him and had at least 2 or more things in common. There's a lot of interesting other people who did some of the same things as him, but what's fascinating is how brazen he was, because this is a guy who would he would basically, like, they found him with one girl chopped up in a wheelbarrow full of blood behind his
Oh,
house.
nice.
Like, and he just left it behind his house. Like, he really, nobody stopped him. Nobody really noticed. He was just this stinky, dirty guy. And he got away with a lot of murders. And everybody would say, like, oh, he's intelligent. He remembers, he remembers every kill. And they speak of him a lot like people speak of Samuel Little in a lot of documentaries I've watched. But this is a guy who didn't have much success in life, conventionally speaking. He didn't have a wife. He wasn't really good at any of his jobs. He had a really hard time making any social progress with other human beings.
You can say he was a loser. It's
Yeah, he
okay.
was a freaking loser. Like that, but this guy also, like, he wasn't that brilliant. He was just somebody who got away with it, had a lot of rage, and he basically, like, did a lot of really disgusting, disturbing stuff, and he had a lot in common, I think, with Robert Schulman and his brother Barry, and he also had a lot in common with, like, Richard Cottingham. He was very into dismembering, and he also he focused on sex workers, just like Cottingham did, just like Schulman did, just like Rex did. And I think that it's very interesting that all of these guys have very similar MOs. Now, we can't say for sure if Rex dismembered or exactly what he did with everyone, because we still don't really know necessarily who else is his victim.
Right.
But we do know, based on what we have, that he likes to wrap women in burlap or tarp. Check. That fits, Arthur Shawcross. That fits Skakel, Altimio Sanchez, Robert Ben Rhodes. That fits Joel Rifkin, Nicholas Wiley, Vincent Johnson, Israel Keys in some instances. There's a lot of people who commit very similar crimes but are very, very different, because some of these guys were city workers and some of them had wives and kids. A lot of
Right.
them had kids.
Right.
So I think it's really important to focus on things that are outliers. Like when we were talking about Rex, we were talking about how he's unique because he's tall, but what are the unique things about his crimes? Now, one of the reasons I'm personally not sure about the Atlantic City thing. I know a lot of people are focusing on the shoes and
Right.
the direction of the Eastbound Strangler.
They were all wrapped too, weren't they?
Yes, they were. I think they were.
I did
Or
a show on that, but it
they
was a long
might have
time ago.
yeah, they might have had something on top of them. But what I found interesting in that case that I want to bring up, let me pull this up real quick. So because I have the Eastbound Strangler on its own. Okay. So with the Eastbound Strangler case, that was in a grouping of 4, correct?
Yeah.
So there were 2 different serial killers. One was a guy named Neil Falls. Do you remember him, his name?
You know a lot more than I do about these
So
guys.
he was murdered by a sex worker in West Virginia. I'm not going to say murdered. He was killed by a sex worker in West Virginia who fought back because he barged into her house with a gun on an in call, and he told her, basically, it was something like, you have a choice whether you want to live or die tonight, or something like that. And before he could even do anything, she knocks the gun out of his hand. They start wrestling. He's trying to kill her every possible way he can. He's strangling her. She's about to die, she says, and she reaches for this rake and she just, boom, gets him. And then I think she shot him with his own gun. And
He had it coming.
yeah,
What year was this?
This was 2015.
Oh,
And you can
okay.
look up the crime scene footage or the evidence, and this poor woman, like, they were putting her all over the news, and she's got an accent like this, and she's just terrified. And she finds out from the police later, after being interviewed, that this Neil Falls guy had a list of women in his car. He had a hatchet, he had a knife, he had a hammer, he had a garrote, he had a saw to dismember. He's also one of the lead suspects, if not already. I think they proved by DNA he killed a bulk amount of the women in Chillicothe, Ohio. That's a cluster of
Oh,
killing.
wow.
That's not that far away, actually. And I thought it was multiple states, but then I checked and I'm like, in Texas, that's just, San Antonio to Dallas.
Is that
But
how you pronounce that? Chillicothe? I've always wondered how to
yeah.
pronounce that. Thank you.
So in Chillicothe, you have to remember one of those victims, Andy had a kill kit, just like Israel Keys, who, by the way, confessed to killing a woman who was a sex worker in New York and dumping her along a waterway or an oceanway, Israel Keys, in 2009. And he confessed to a very specific amount and said that he wouldn't give any more. Now, the reason I brought up Neil Falls is because of this. Neil Falls not only had a list, but he also, some of the women that he was suspected of killing, because they did find others, and I believe they either brought cases against, like, they wanted to bring cases against him, but he'd already been killed. So it's kind of like, what's the point? You know what I mean? But they still want to know in order to close other cases. And that's been a battle. And especially because multi-jurisdictional stuff, whether or not he was in CODIS, I don't even know about that. But I do know that he had very specific things he wanted to do to these women based on information they found. He wrote a lot of things down. He also purchased, I believe it was pressed white shirts and socks that he had planned to put on these women, like when he killed them, and face them in a certain direction. Like, he had plans.
Wait, CC with
There's
the info. 5 white t-shirts, underwear, and shoes with a list of people he was going after.
Yep. Now, what's fascinating about that is a couple of years later, I think it was 1 or 2 years later, I saw this interview with a serial killer on one of those shows like The Killer Speaks. And he was talking about how if he'd gotten away with it longer, he had plans to purchase white socks, a pack of 4, and to put them on his victims. But he kind of wanted to keep one after rubbing them with it.
Mm-hmm.
Then you look, and there's an Oregon serial killer. I wish I could remember his name. I was going to search for it right before this, but he's a guy who, what I was reading about him is similar situation. And he was in one of my textbooks too, and we were discussing.
What is this man's name? Neil Falls?
Neil Falls, yeah. So, who also looks like the Route 29 stalker. I'm just going to say it. But there is also, he has victims in Ohio, Illinois, Las Vegas. He's wanted. And then apparently he was operating in West Virginia. He at one point in time lived in another state, I want to say North or South Carolina briefly. So this guy, they believe, definitely killed more people, and they can't say why, which makes no sense, because it's like, oh, we only know things that the killer would know, but the killer's dead. So just release it, like how they release the photos of, can I tell you, the amount of serial killers who pretend to be photographers is astounding.
Really?
Yes. As photographers and realtors, people who work in real estate, astounding. I think Alcala was even one of them. There were quite a few of them who, mainly in Cali, they pretend to be a photographer to lure teenage girls and young girls. And they use that as a means to
like
take
a modeling
photos.
thing. Yeah.
Robert Ben Rhodes is also on my list of potentials for any of these women in Long Island. And let me tell you why. He was a trucker. He operated all over the U.S. He's already confessed to one in New York, I believe, and they've connected him to another in that area. And then he operated in an area going up towards Virginia, and he was on his way there, and they have all his trucking routes listed out. He picked up a woman who had a really fascinating interview, and I'll send you links for it to post if you want. In a I think it was G or Esquire. It's a woman who wrote what happened to her when he picked her up, and she was able to get away. Now, this is a guy who had almost the exact same setup as the Toy Box Killer. He had a large truck with torture stuff in it. He'd pick up anybody. He focused on young girls, women who were sex workers, just anybody, moms down on their luck. He would pick you up, offer you a ride his truck, and then he would do horrible things to you. Now, his thing was he liked to take pictures of the victims right before he killed them. If you look up Regina K. Walters, there's a famous picture of her doing this in a barn in the middle of nowhere. It was like, I want to say like Iowa or somewhere. It was literally the middle of nowhere. She was a girl that was kidnapped from here in Texas, in Houston, with her boyfriend. He killed the boyfriend, took her. He would put them in black dresses. He'd cut their hair. He'd take them to a barn, and he'd take photos of them right before he killed them in pretty much every way you could imagine. He got away with so much crime for so many years. He killed there's an insane number of women that he suspected in. He also, the girl who got away described how she got away from him. And when you hear the things he says and you kind of hear what these victims went through, first thing I thought is he could be any of these women, especially because he was in and out of Long Island.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At those times, like for 3 decades.
You have an amazingly photographic memory.
These are
yes, I am letting Oblivious Benson talk a lot tonight because she rarely comes on the show and she has so much information to share that I'm just going to let her go with it. So,
I do want to go down a little list. Though.
Yeah, you want to show some graphics because we have like, I don't know, we said we were going to try and keep it to 2 hours. We have like 15 minutes left.
Yeah, let's let me pull this open. I wish I could. Okay, I'll just leave it like that. I'll just go through and talk through as I go through.
You present on, you can present and then I can add it to the screen. Just go to the bottom there.
And you know what? We could even do another live one day because I'm not even a quarter of the way.
I know, because the tangents and the, the rabbit holes call me Alice. People call me Alice.
There's so much. Okay, here we go. We'll do this.
Everybody wants to keep going on and on and on, but I'm just trying to reroute you back onto the track, girl.
Yes.
Girl. Sometimes we got to get back on the track.
Rein me in. Okay.
When we talk on the phone, we go on for hours and we never talk about the thing that we got on the phone to talk about.
I know, we're doing it again. All right. Okay. It says, I clicked on it. Is it showing?
Oh, here we go. Yeah, here. Dun, dun, dun.
Here we go. So I bleeped out some words so you wouldn't get in trouble.
Yeah, I think.
So do you remember when we talked about this? Going back to Rex Heuermann.
Yes.
Do you remember when we talked about the posts on the escort forums?
Yes.
This is one of them. This is from
let me just recap for those of who don't know, who are not familiar with the Gilgo 4 cases. Rex Heuermann, the alleged accused Long Island serial killer, is indicted for 3 of the Gilgo 4 women that were found on Gilgo Beach in 2010 December. He was finally just arrested in 2023 because of the extreme corruption in Suffolk County. I'm just going to say it. And the police chief that we had here was named Jimmy Burke. He wouldn't let the FBI in. He had his own proclivities and his own issues. So it took 13 years for them to finally connect Rex Heuermann to 3 of the Gilgo 4. We are waiting for an indictment on Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Amber Lynn Costello was the last of the 4 to go missing. And the person who last saw her alive was her roommate. Her roommate gave a description of the man who came as a John to the house I guess it was for an in-call for Amber. Did he find her on Craigslist or was it some other? How did Rex find Amber? Was it through Craigslist? I don't remember, but
I want to say it was Craigslist, but it could have been one of these forums.
Yeah. The roommate gave police a description of the last person to see Amber alive as being 6'6", looking like an ogre, brown shaggy hair, thick glasses that were 70s style, and he drove a green Chevy Avalanche. They had the description of him in the file as being the last person to see Amber Lynn Costello alive. Her roommate gave that description of this guy who came to the house. He came to the house and they pulled a ruse on him. Her thing was she used to pull ruses on like Johns that would come to the house. She would take their money and then she would have somebody burst into the room pretending to be a jealous boyfriend, chase Rex away or the John away, and they would keep the money. Rex didn't like that and he got very angry. And there are some text messages that we have that are in the probable cause affidavit that talk about Rex texting Amber, right? Like, or what are you going to do for me? I want my money back, that kind of thing. Apparently he goes back the next night. That's when the roommate sees Rex, gives the description to the police. And that is where we are now. These old escort forums that you had been looking at, these message boards, which were essentially like Yelp, right? Yelp for escorts and Yelp for Johns, where they would go on and rate each other.
I would even say more like
2010, 2009-ish.
Yeah, maybe even more like Reddit in that like they can communicate and share different files and stuff as well.
Okay. But they were also like reviewing
Yeah.
them, like, "Oh, don't hire
Yeah.
her. She's crazy." Or they
And
would say,
warning each other
"She's
and giving each
violent."
other leads. This is a good one. Go visit her, stuff like that. And often there would be escorts that would go on there and pretend to be Johns and give themselves good reviews and
Wow.
vice versa. And so they'd end up getting in these big forum fights that are real fun to sift through. So a lot of people had asked about
Backpage. Could have been
yeah,
Backpage.
about the old escort forums. And I found this and wanted to show it to everyone so that they could see. If you want to know exactly what was said in those forums in relation to Amberlynn Costello, and the situation as it went down. This that we're looking at is a post from July 11th, 2010, and you can actually see her ads. So it was Backpage and Craigslist. Those links in this screenshot are quite literally right here. These are hers. So you can click that, go to the Wayback Machine, and you'll see her ads. And I believe one is her sister's.
Wow.
So Italian Beauty and Southern Belle. So that's what they posted in their ads. Um, so July 11th was pretty much one of the first posts that I could find back in the day where they discussed this supposed scam. Now, keep in mind, this was posted in 2010. This is right around when she went missing.
Right.
And if you want to read it, Melanie, you could go ahead and read it.
Well, that means I gotta make it really big. I don't my cupcake logo is in the corner. What's underneath
Okay,
that? I
never
can't
mind.
move it. What is it? No, what does it
It
say
was in
after
2010.
Amberlynn? Oh, it says 2010. Okay.
Yeah.
Warning, Will Robinson. This is posted by Rick O'Shea 53.
Mhm.
Sounds like things have gotten nastier with these two. From another board, this is a robbery scam. I went to this house where the provider told me to meet her in West Babylon off of America Avenue. She had me come. It got comfortable, seemed really friendly, told me there was a dog in the other room, thought it was all was well. Provided the donation, she slipped away and got comfortable, and so did I. Then there was a knock at the door, and a guy came out of the back room. Guys were yelling, "What's going on? What is this, my girlfriend?" I said, "I don't want any problems, nor do you." I told the girl to return the donation for modeling and fetishing, and the guys got in my face with a baseball bat. One had a baseball bat. Again, said, "I don't want any problems, return the donation and I will leave." That didn't happen. I didn't think to bring the Thule, and I started wrestling with both guys. We split out to the front yard where I made it clear that it wasn't over. So after posting this, for others to be weary, I got to go handle this situation. Pictures are real and the apartment that she was at. And then he posted pictures in the apartment. I guess I got off easy, just had a crappy session. And then he says, here's a link to the BP back page ads, since the back page ads last longer than the Craigslist ads.
And then the last one's not important. It's just someone being rude.
Well, wait, the
But
last one's called Club Goer. Club Goer.
yeah.
Interesting, because La Trapeze was a club, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh, that is a good point. There's also in this what they're referencing when he's talking about how it's from another board and it being nasty between these two. There are two posters who I eventually found the other board they were talking about. There were two posters that were going back and forth. One, I believe, was possibly Amber's sister because there was someone defending it and calling this person a liar. And then this person who made the original post is saying, like, I'm not a liar. And not only that, they took my clothes and chased me with a bat. And what's interesting is there's another guy who comes on and confirms it because he is the neighbor. And he goes on to say that, you know, he's been having issues, which I find very funny that this neighbor at the time, or the supposed neighbor, is who comes in. And I think that it could just be that same guy with another account trying to back up his first story, right? So the original guy, what's interesting is his I should try to go back and actually find this if they haven't taken it down, but I do remember, I think I saved a screenshot of it, but the original guy had a handle that when you look it up, he's got quite a few other posts about this scam and he's very mad about it. And I thought it was very odd how angry he got and how many different forums he posted it in.
Mm-hmm.
Simultaneously, on the news, there is from 2010, there's a news report about prostitution being a problem and escorts and home calls. And there's a guy who does an interview that happens to live like right next door to her, who states that somebody, yes, gun, that somebody came running out of that house once screaming and had been beaten with a bat and was naked and wanted to come in his house and call the cops. And he said, no, get the hell out of here.
Well,
And
let me just point out for a second that Amber Costello was last seen on September 2nd of 2010. These posts were when?
This was July 10th of 2010.
So she was last seen on September 2nd.
And remember they said we weren't.
And she lived at 1112 America Avenue in West Babylon.
And I just want to say, like, for people who doubt any of that story, like, there it is right there, reported months before. And this isn't Photoshop. You could go look this up and find it. And it's fascinating because this is one of many posts. Now, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I did find it odd that they said, you know, we hadn't been running the scam for very long. July to August to September, that's 2 months. Also, it's got 2 different links to 2 different pages for, I believe, her and her sister, if I remember correctly. So running that kind of a scam for that long, and they're also speaking in past tense, like this happened to me, and it makes it seem like when you see the other preceding posts, that this had happened 2 weeks ago, I believe. So even then, it could have been going as long as 3 months. But I do think that the amount of talk that was out on this forums escalated to the point where police should have intervened. And at some point, there should have maybe been more of a focus on it by the Suffolk police. What I did think was interesting was when
you don't know what was going on in Suffolk.
Yeah. Oh, I know now.
To do with this.
But when these women turned up, right? When their bodies turned up, FBI did, or they said FBI, it could have just been the police. They did visit some of these guys' homes on this forum because they talk about it.
Oh,
you can
wow.
literally go to the forums and see them discussing. An FBI guy or a cop came by my house. I was upset. He said if I agreed to give a polygraph that basically, you know, he won't tell my wife. Like, it was kind of dirty, some of the threats. But these people did get visits because when Amber's body came up specifically, I mean, this is basically how I know that they eventually did check out the forums.
Talk about
because these guys talk about it, and because the very specific details that are given in there match up with a lot of information that we now know is true, especially with the affidavit and whatnot. Now, one thing that's interesting is one guy made threats to kill her. Like, he openly said he was going to basically set an appointment with her under a different screen name, meet up with her, show up with, you know, a bat, and his buddy is an ex-convict who's going to take care of them. Now, there were some overzealous web sleuths who jumped to the conclusion that this convict, for some reason, lived with the guy that Shannon Gilbert last was seen at his house.
That's what somebody's asking, if you ever found anything about any postings about Shannon Gilbert prior to May 1st of 2010.
I would have to go back and look, because that was like a week-long deep dive, and I found a lot of postings and just kind of put them all in one folder. This stuff takes a lot of time, and it's also a lot of dark stuff to look at. So I feel like that there were a couple of things that I did find that could have been her, but I do think that there was a specific I do think there was a specific ad that is out there, like, and it's already made the rounds on like ID Network and all these shows, like, that they show a still of. I know that there's one for almost all the other girls. The thing was, like, Backpages and Craigslist aside, some of them used call services. I know Shannon used a call service. Simultaneously, her mom stated that she had a ton of old records where Shannon would, like, write down all of her clients in a notebook and, like, information in a notebook about specific people, just like escorts would do online. And because he hates me. Let me keep reading what this guy said real quick. Sorry, I got distracted. It might have been
Something's
like,
going on with my StreamYard, and I
Opie
can't even
is the
take down these.
neighbor, and it's yeah. I agree with him. Okay, so honey, send me the facts, send me the deets. Okay, so I do think with Shannon, there were trails of her online, obviously, and the digital forensics with her case, I think, could be a little more sticky because of the location she was found and because of the hurricane afterwards. It does make me wonder how cell service is out there. You know what I mean? Because that disruptive cell service can really hinder some of the digital information that you get back. As far as like the forums go, you can kind of I think Shannon you can find under her working name. They all have working names. That's another thing. Once you get their working name, you can find them more likely than not. I know that there was one that went by Cleo or Chloe. And if you look up Chloe in all the Long Island forums, you can definitely find photos. So, or at least links. And then if you go to the links, they'll be broken or it'll say taken down by FBI because it's back pages. If you run it through Wayback Machine, sometimes you can see it. I also always recommend go to WebSleuth first because I know back when I was looking at it, they were looking at it because I was helping contribute to that. So they have a big mass collection of anything that was found or could be found.
I'm glitching. I'm going to go out and come right back in. You can just take over for a second.
Okay, I'm going to minimize this and then I'm going to show you guys something else that's fascinating. Well, let's do this one first. Okay. So Maureen Brainerd Barnes. I think that there's something that a lot of people might not realize. I'm not sure if they know this, but Maureen, one of the reasons that people attributed the belt to her right away and that I think that they kind of had to announce that it was directly connected to her was because when the belt picture first came up, when you clicked on it on the Gilgo website, it didn't have her photos. It just had the belt. But the title of it up here in the URL was Belt Pick Barnes because they forgot to change the data in the photo and rename it. So people automatically attributed the belt to her. What I find is interesting is that she's the one that they have yet to charge Rex with, I believe. And I think that's still the case. Yet everybody's so certain that this was his grandfather's belt, right?
We're waiting for the indictment on her, correct?
And I think it's so strange that like they want to know this belt because this belt is connected to LISK specifically. They said that this belt belonged to his grandfather, right?
Right. That's what they think. Yeah, that's what we think.
When you look at the belt picture from the original website, before they even brought her up as being possibly connected to it, it was called Belt Pick Barnes. Like they forgot to rename it.
Wow.
So that belt obviously is connected to Maureen. With that said, how can it not be Rex? That's all I'm saying.
That's a lot of info, yeah.
Like I think that alone kind of should tell us that's what's up. Now, maybe they're trying to.
Remember the dealer that came on the show that night that dealt blackjack at Mohegan Sun Casino?
Oh, I have so much to say on that. I'll keep it brief though.
I think Maureen Brainerd Barnes also worked at that casino and was also a dealer.
Yeah. She worked at Foxwoods Casino as well, where Markov visited, the serial killer from Connecticut who killed sex workers. Yeah, Markov also went to the same casino, which is another crazy true crime fact. Did you know that in the same years that he was serial killing sex workers, Philip Markov, the medical student from Boston, he was also at the same casino that Maureen worked at, and likely because he was into blackjack and poker, likely may have come in contact with her. Two serial killers, like what are the odds? In a different state. Yeah, absolutely. Foxwoods Casino and then the one that your caller worked at. Like it's really crazy because he went to all the casinos there. He was really big into Connecticut casinos. That was kind of his thing. And in fact, when he was engaged, he would take his fiance to these casinos. Simultaneously he'd come back alone and scout them, and he'd blow all their money. And losing all of his money in these casinos is what he cited as being the purpose of him killing these women, because he wanted to rob them. So
Wow.
it's just interesting that Maureen likely came in contact with 2 serial killers in her lifetime at the same casino. And this was the same time period too. So we also have Philip Markoff, who, by the way, was, yes, he lived in Boston, but he also lived in Long Island. So it's very interesting. Like, there's a lot of them. And I just wanted to point that out real quick. Another thing that I wanted to point out is one thing that I don't see mentioned a lot. You know how a lot of people are saying, you know, these are probably all wrecks, right? I think it's interesting to call this all the same dumping ground. That's just my opinion. But if you see in the center, these are all, these 4 are the ones that Rex is supposedly responsible for. I can see maybe unidentified Asian male being grouped in there, especially with his history, sure. But these seem to be on the outside. So while people say, what are the, like, we've already discussed some of the probability and chances of some of these crazy, astounding things. But I do think that it is possible. I'll just say that there could be 1, 2, 3, 4, if we include Rex. I'd say max 4, because I would be willing to say 1 is a one-off. I definitely would be willing to say that, especially in the case of Shannon, it could be, you know, but it's just interesting how these are the ones that we know are Rex, and these are the ones that we're questioning. And they're, aside from Asian male, there seems to be a significant, comparatively, distance between this one and how closely these are grouped. Does that make sense?
It does, except I know the area and I drive that parkway all
Yeah.
the time, and it's really not far at all. It's you know, it's like a stone's throw. Like you could, like,
Fair
it's
enough.
really close. And Valerie Mack, I can't really, let me just see if I can. So Valerie Mack was dismembered. Jessica Taylor was also dismembered. And
But see,
then
that's the thing. He didn't,
Megan
as
Waterman,
far as we
Maureen,
know,
this was the 4.
as far as we know, he didn't dismember.
Right, but
We
they
don't
went
know
missing
that.
a
We know
lot
he strangled.
earlier.
Huh?
They went missing a lot earlier in time. He was
Exactly.
younger, right?
Exactly. Yes. But again, it's very rare. There are less than 0.01% that dismember and then later just strangle. You know,
But he was
it's
younger and he had more
de-escalating.
energy. And then
It's just,
he was dismembering, and he was putting the body parts all over Manorville and other places, and nobody was finding him anyway. So he's like, what am I going to go to all this trouble for, to keep dismembering people because they're not being found anyway? I mean, that's my theory.
I don't know.
think he threw it.
I think that, like almost every other serial killer in history, they work with what works unless circumstance or chaos erupts. So I would be wondering if he had a major life change in between whoever the most recent one is before his first.
So
we
Valerie
know of.
Mack went missing in September of 2000. She was an escort from Philly. The last place she was seen was in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Jessica Taylor went missing July of 2003.
We got to also remember there were 7, I believe, torso killers of prostitutes in Philly at this time.
Wow. But
And
why
then
would they
we've
come
got
all the
in
way to Long
Jersey
Island
12.
to dump a body?
Because almost all the ones on my list that I found had connections to Long Island. Like literally we've got, we've got something like 60 that had committed a similar crime, and could have committed more or thought to have, although only proven to have one victim. And then we've got mafia, which a ton of torso dismemberment and destroying of tattoos. And then we've got serial killers. So in those 3 groups of possibilities, just in Philly, and recently Philly, they caught 2 of them in the last like 2 months. There was a bike path guy who was with a machete cutting people, and then there was another guy who was strangling. The guy who was strangling, I want to say Franklin. I have to look it up. But we'll do Philly is a whole different, it's a whole different ball game. Like there were a lot of people who are just getting caught now, like literally in the last 2 months, which is very interesting. It's been on the news, and I've caught a couple of reports. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Here we go. We've got, by the way, just New York adjacent, from the 80s to now, we've got 29 people who could have been responsible for any of these. Because we also have to remember, if we're willing to believe that Rex would change his MO, or that Rex would change anything, his style, his dumping ground, his weapon, then we also have to believe that any serial killer could do that. And like, who, especially when it comes to ones who are around the area, because it makes no sense to say, well, Rex could, but they couldn't, especially when you consider Rex studied those before him. And also, Ivanovitz, who is a big Route 29 stalker and Colonial Parkway murder and almost all the Virginia cases, he's a big suspect in those. He was a cop who escaped to Florida but got convicted for killing and murdering and raping 3 women. But he also, in Florida, I think he killed himself, but he was a corrections officer from here. And he could have been responsible for a lot of these. There's a lot of things that have to do with specifics of how the bodies were found that relate very much to other serial killers that were potentially in the area. Especially depending on how the body was found. The chances of it being a dumping ground, profiling, if we were looking at that, we would say that it's probably someone who's comfortable with the area. So if we're just talking about people who at one point lived there or were comfortable, I mean, we've got numbers in the 30s and 40s. And then that's just New York. When we're looking at serial killers from other areas who committed very similar crimes and were known to travel outside of state, we're looking at, 16 from Jersey, I think, and like 14 from Connecticut. And I'm not even saying just serial killers, like people like, for example, whoever killed Karina Homer. That's a big one. She had surgical precision listed as one of the key features of her dismemberment, but surgical precision is also mentioned in some of the 80s cases. They're mentioned in some that were later found to be Rifkin's. But this guy was in Boston and they only found half of her. And from what they know, she frequented a nightclub and she was an au pair from out of town. And it's just a very strange case because that has a lot in common with your golf victims. And then we've got 4 killers who were really into golf, one who killed with a golf club. We've got 2 that left heads on baseball diamonds. You know what I mean? Like, there's very unique features here, but one of the common ones that a lot of them share is beaches or water, woods.
Yeah.
And
Well, that brings me to this comment here that Leith says, based on the witness statement, it sounds like Rex made some of them play the running game. And you and I have talked about this before. Like maybe there was some sort of a hunting club involved where they would send the girls out running and then go hunting them. Because that's what when Shannon went on the 911 call, we're talking about the code names. And that's what she says to Michael Packer, to whoever she's talking to in that 911 tape, is, why are you calling me by my real name?
That I actually have a theory on that, but I'm so sorry. I have to use the bathroom so bad.
Yeah,
I have
we
1
gotta
minute.
find a good time to break and then come back to this anyway. But yeah,
Okay.
if you want to run and just go off for a second, and I'll put myself.
Yeah, give me 1 moment.
I'm gonna just remove all this. All right, cool. I'll take some super chats in the meantime. Snazzy, thank you again. His kids were older, unable to dismember in home or near it as he could have possibly done when his kids were born, or before his kids were born and younger. Maybe that's what I was thinking too, because listen, I live here. I refuse to believe that there's more than 1 or 10 or 20 or 17 or any a number other than the one. And let's connect them to everything, because that is what would make me sleep better at night. Bullets for dinner. Do you know about the Kelly Browning case? No, but I will write that down and I will look into that. We were talking about cases for next year. I think this was a very early comment that I starred. And I think, honey, 2800, I think that OB addressed this before. My friend's son got pew-pewed many times and dumped in a dumpster. His case has went cold. No one's ever come forward on his case. That is very, very sad. I'm very sorry to hear that. Maybe she can help. You can find her email on her channel page. Whoop. I'm coming in late, but I'm coming in hot on my alter ego profile. It's great to see you two up here together. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Honey, yeah, it's sad there's no justice for him. The cops blew it off. There were whispers that Bryce Rhodes did it, but no one would come forward to say it outright. Wow. Some of these are for her, so I'm going to hold those. Leith again coming in with all of the intel. I think I can tell by your comments that you're very, very well versed in this subject. The FBI profilers say that over 100 serial killers are operating around the U.S. alone at any given time. Statistically speaking, I think that is correct. Amanda Teresa, I kind of feel like it was a few people, maybe just two, who knew each other and used the same spot. The crimes are just too slightly different. So I think maybe it's a team who have an understanding. A lot of people have thought for many years that here on Long Island that there was more than one person involved, that there was some sort of ring or club or people making snuff films. There have been a lot of different theories. Margaret says the Netflix documentary on the torso killer is Crime Scene Times Square Killer. It is excellent. Thank you for that. And Mary is pointing out that White Underbelly is the interview of the street people. I got you back. And what about Rex's brother, who's almost his twin but shorter? Doesn't he own a similar truck to Rex? Not only does he own a similar truck, he owns the exact green Chevy Avalanche that Rex was driving in 2010 when he last met up with Amber Costello. And I can't believe that truck is still in the family. It was kind of like,
and
hey,
it's on Google
bro,
Maps.
take
You
my
can
car.
go on Google Maps and see it parked in front of Rex's house, but you could also see it in other places. It's really crazy.
Well, he bought another one too. He bought another one after that. That was the green Chevy Avalanche. Thank you, Jason, for your super chat. Great show, guys. Mel, did you get the email of the new Mr. Hunter meme? Yes, I did. That I won't bring that up now. And a clip of Rex supposedly on 911. I don't know. I have to go back and look. If I did get that, I will send that to OB to check out. And Snazzy Trinkets Jewelry, we already addressed this. Somebody asked this for you. Dun, dun, dun. Well, somebody says, okay, we want Oblivious Benson to run a 1-week training camp for us, and she can charge anything she wants. Sign me up.
Well, I appreciate that, but I would not charge because, first of all, I'm in Texas. It's illegal, I think. But second of all, that I want to do this stuff. I want as many people to learn this stuff as possible. I think charging limits knowledge. I think that this sort of stuff should be free, just like Pacer. Just like I know a lot of you guys hate Reddit, but like a lot of the information and the ability for people to gather and discuss and have educated discourse as opposed to just being able to look it up on your own. I think it's important to have brainstorming sessions with others. Places like Web Sleuth are very, very important. So I would definitely my channel is going to be full of this stuff eventually. I'm going to nerd out. I promise.
You're too busy right now. Anne says, do you have access to mobile phone forensic tools like Celebrite? And how do you feel about facial recognition as an investigatory tool? For example, Clearview. Thanks.
Okay. Cellbrite, you have to basically get training for and certification, and it's a whole process. It's like going to school all over again. That's what I'm working on, baby. I have a professor who's trying to get me into a program to train on Cellbrite. I would love to be a Cellbrite expert. I pretty much know as much as I can know about it that's been put out publicly. I have some friends in law enforcement who've discussed it with me and a professor who's gone over it with me. I find it to be amazing. It's also, I think people, if they could understand it better, especially juries, there would be a huge difference in convictions. I really feel that because right now there's a case. I'm trying to remember the exact one, but basically a lot of people
read.
Huh?
It's the Karen Reed case that Celebrite is involved in because of the
Yes.
Google search. How
So
long
a
to
lot
die
of
in the cold?
I did do a bit of a dive on that the other night, and I gotta say, man, first of all, I don't think she did it just based on, like, the video footage alone of her hitting a car, like, and I think some of the, information on that case may be misinterpreted by the media, but as far as the Cellbrite stuff goes, oh my god, like, basically, when you open a window in Google, it's gonna show you the time that window opened on Cellbrite, but with the updated software, it's gonna tell you the time it was reopened, not just the initial first time.
Mhm.
And that makes a big difference onto whether there was activity on your phone. But a lot of people were furious and thought the prosecution was withholding evidence when in reality, Cellbrite just hadn't been updated. Like the software could only do so much. And as technology goes on, it's able to do more. So the difference between a year with how fast Cellbrite is changing and how many updates there are, you can't fault the prosecution for
Oh, I
not
can.
knowing.
Okay,
No,
let's stop
in
this.
the Cellbrite
Right,
case,
yeah, right,
no, no,
yeah,
no,
we're
no.
gonna stop this
This is
conversation.
no, this is important. You can't fault someone for not having software that didn't exist. The software that they had could only tell them so much. It was their responsibility to say, "Hey, it's limited." But
When?
at the
But
time,
this just happened a year ago. This is
yeah,
not like
like
we're not talking about a case from 2010,
no, that's what I said. In a year, the
right?
technology has changed
Really?
so much. Yes. Cellbrite updates like more than Mac. Like it's constantly updating.
Hmm,
So as more people get trained on it and more coders work with it, they improve it just like any other technology. But it's going super fast right now. So what I thought was weird or what sucked, at least for the defense anyway, was that I just think it was a waste of an argument, a waste of time because the prosecution really should have explained it better. But basically, they were told by Cellbrite, this is the information that we have. And then as their technology improved over the year, which it's gone through like 6 updates,
mhm.
now they know even more specificity and they've gone, "Oh, nope, actually, she reopened this hours later," which means there was time she had slept. It's not like she was looking at this when the crime occurred or right after.
Well,
That
we're not
was
even talking about Karen Reed's cell phone, we're talking about somebody else's cell phone, so there's a whole lot to this case that it would be we could not even get into this
yeah, that was the
right now. So it
brothers or
was
the victim's
somebody
sister
else
or something.
Googling how
Yeah,
long to die in the cold, and they misspelled it, and it was allegedly at a certain time, and then they're saying, "No, I can't even, like, we can't even get into that
it's
right
too
now because
much.
it's so,
Yeah. But
yes,
the
I'm
point is
working on this,
Cellbrite's
Kiwi.
amazing, but in its final form, it's amazing. If you go back even a year, 10 months ago, like, it's gonna have some wrong data in some cases. That can be tricky. I don't think they should use it until they're 100% certain because they used it in Delphi years ago. Are we gonna rerun that data now that it's even more up to date and get more accurate information and find out Richard Allen didn't do it? Like, I'm not saying
Well,
he
I
didn't,
guess you're
but
gonna have to because nobody has had a trial yet. Neither one of those 2 have had a trial yet. So, yeah, they're gonna
how
have to
many
rerun the
times have
data.
you heard of that, Melanie, where,
Right.
something advances so far so quickly that just a few years ago, the data could be interpreted totally differently?
Mhm.
Like, that's kinda crazy. That's like just like with DNA. As DNA forensics improve, we need to be rerunning a lot of evidence because
Mhm.
it could exonerate people. People were
Yeah.
put in prison years ago for
Oh, yeah.
DNA
Oh,
that was
yeah.
similar. Now we know if it is or isn't. So it's very important. I think we should constantly be rerunning old cold cases, which
Yeah, and how about all those grape kits that were never run and the backlogs there? I mean, we could talk about this
hundreds of
forever. And Lorraine says
Mhm.
the experts need to learn to explain properly, like you do, OB.
Thank you.
Too many experts would bore you before getting to the important parts, or a jury could miss it. Yeah, you'd make a great expert witness.
Thank you. I think it's also a situation where people who are really into this type of nerd stuff, some of them are like antisocial people who don't like to talk, but I think that there should be liaisons, just like the police have PR people. I
Mhm.
think that these companies should have data PR people, people who know how to explain the data in ways that a jury can understand. That makes sense. I think a
Mhm.
lot of them focus too much on accusing the other side when really it's like, no, we just both dumb-dumbed, we
Well,
did it
yeah, and
dumb.
they need people like you to explain. We're creating
Yeah. I'll just look at the jury, go, "They did a bad. Let
whole
it
new
go."
occupation for you. All right, we need to wrap at some point. So let's
Yeah.
try and find a place to wrap, and then we'll come back and do a part 2. How about that?
Yeah, we'll do a part 2 because getting into the Route 29 stuff is gonna take all day, but basically, I think people should definitely look at.
All right, let me put you full screen for a second so you can give people some homework to do, and we'll come
Let's
back
give you
next
homework.
week. So we'll give people some homework. Hold on.
Okay, here's my homework, everybody. I want you to look up NamUs and look up the statistics for NamUs. I want you to look up how many missing people there are in the US using the Uniform Crime Statistics or the Uniform Crime Report on the FBI website. You can look at all the statistics state by state, and you can see how many missing persons there are reported versus how many missing persons there are listed in NamUs. Just do it for a couple of states. I would pick them in the East Coast, right? You're going to see a huge difference in that number. And the reason is because NamUs only has a small percentage of cases. NamUs requires that a police department report its statistics as they come in or annually. Out of all of the departments that take place in reporting to NamUs, there are maybe one or two in the East Coast, in the top right part of the United States, pretty much going in a diagonal down to, I would say, like Oklahoma. There is a straight line of places where there are insane amounts of missing persons, supposed truck stop disappearances, if you will. And you'll notice that a lot of these departments are not listed as having reported to NamUs. The numbers are astronomically different. So people who go to NamUs as the end all be all for missing persons might not realize that not only are the missing cases not all available, but some of them are outdated. You're also going to see that potential bones that have been found or bodies that are unidentified are now identified, yet they're still up. You have to double check all of your data with both that resource and others. And I would always suggest going to the government website, going to the clerk for the area that you're looking at. If you're working on a cold case, you're going to want to go into newspapers.com and news archives. You're going to want to go to the specific newspaper website or news site and scroll to the bottom and look for archives for that town. And you're also going to want to look at old archives on both YouTube and you can go to Vanderbilt University or University of North Texas website, and you can see a lot of old archived news footage. You're going to want to watch the news reports for cases that are like pre-90s, especially the ones that Melanie was talking about last week. You're going to want to go look at the reports on newspapers.com, and you're going to want to read through those in addition to just visit your library if you can. And if you can't, you can use WorldCat. I believe it's worldcat.org. It could be .com. I don't know. But if you go to WorldCat, that's an online archive of the library. There are a lot of different states that have different rules and regulations as to who is a sex offender, as to apparently what is required to go into CODIS is very different in New York than Texas. There are different requirements for gathering and attaining records that you can get through a state website easier than a city website. And I definitely think that if you're looking at cold cases, you should focus more on whatever you know to be true, like 100% true stuff that is in affidavits, stuff that's in court records. I think that if you go to Judy Records, Pacer, if you go to Court Listener, or you could just type in under the FOIA lookup, you can go to the FOIA website and see all the stuff people have already FOIA'd. And you can pull those cases so that you don't have to re-FOIA them and see the same data. You can do all of this, and you can also take keywords and run them through Wayback Machine. If you're looking for somebody who committed a crime and you suspect it is a serial killer, find a unique trait about them and search using that. If you go into newspapers and you're searching for women who have been strangled, you're going to get hundreds of thousands of articles. You're going to see repeats of the same 10 to 20 AP Newswire stories that are just copied pasted. If it's a radio transcript, we have this thing called traffic when I worked in radio, and it was essentially all of the news reports for the day. Those come straight from one of those copy paste news archives. You can go into these and you can use like your newspaper's account. You can go in there and you can type in peaches, for example, or woman dismembered, tattoo, mutilated. That's going to give you a way more specific funnel to see potential victims with a similar, crime scenes with a similar MO or a similar signature, anything that has a characteristic that's unique. For example, if someone's posed or splayed a certain way, if somebody was stabbed specifically with a weapon that's rarely used, garrots aren't really used as much as knives. Garrots aren't used as much as bare hands. You can go to Bone ID to identify specific bones. There are pages like, for example, if you go on NCMEC, you can cross-reference missing kids with reports in recent news articles, but you can do the same thing with cold cases. So my homework to you is on all the cases that Melanie mentioned, I highly recommend going in and doing this. Go to newspapers.com first. You're going to see so much more information than I could spend all day telling you about these cases. I think that, oh, you're welcome for the FOIA tip, Margaret. I think that there are interesting trends in these cases, specifically the skating rink ones. I think that interpreting the data or the story, if you will, by looking at affidavits of Restivo and the other two guys that were wanted in and spent time in prison actually for one of the cases that she was talking about. I believe it was Katie and Teresa, and I have to check. We'll talk about it next time. But you're going to see an entire situation where these guys got released based on DNA, which means that it had to be someone else, right? But what's interesting is the guys that were exonerated and released because of DNA, who definitely didn't do it, they're the only connection that these three girls have in common, aside from the skating rink. What's also interesting is that the manager who got in a fight with one of the victims that night didn't report back to the police very important vital information until 2012. And something that wasn't widely reported is that one man reported his car stolen one night. And when they find it, his rope is what was used to kill one of the girls.
Yeah.
And her blood was in his car, this French guy. They never ran his DNA. They tried to use polygraphs in court before there were laws against admissibility that were strongly, or I believe it was before it was considered probable cause. It really changed the landscape of what can happen. They tried to double jeopardize one guy. Like, you're going to see so much in those skating rink adjacent cases and the cases with the young teen girls from the 80s that I think had we had the technology that we have now back then, these killers would have been caught already. There's a lot of Route 29 stalker, Colonial Parkway murder, and Shenandoah murder connections that have already been made all over the internet that are fascinating. But what's even more fascinating is the dark truck. It does make me wonder now about Craig. It simultaneously makes me wonder about Rex. But then when you look at it, there's some differences and some similarities. You're going to see so many other serial killers that reportedly did a lot of things the same way, but you can't discount people who got caught once. Because if they did something heinous once, the chance of them doing it again or having done something before, I think, greatly increases. If someone gets caught once and they were caught before 1995, that increases their chance of being a multiple offender even more, especially if it involves dismemberment. There are so many that have that. So I recommend going through and making lists. You know what I mean? Make literal lists of people who fit specific patterns and try not to focus so much on the profiling as being this guy did it, because that's not what profiling is. It's funneling down. Here are our possibilities. You know, as much as Rex could have done all of them, he also could have done none of them. Like
Well,
that.
no, don't say that. He's been indicted on 3, so let's not
No,
have
I'm talking about the
intentional.
others. I'm talking about the
Yeah.
outliers. You know what I mean? He might have done 4, but I would wonder, had he committed grape before that? Had he definitely, I think they need to look at arsons. That's what I think. But they probably already know that.
Well,
Because yeah.
let's break now because we've already gone an hour over what we said we were going
Have
to
we?
do.
Oh
I
my
gotta go. I'm
God.
sorry. See
I
what
barely said
TJ
anything.
said here? Do you see what TJ said here? Parabon Nanolabs and University of Texas just ID'd a Gary Ridgway victim missing since 1982.
Wow. And you know what? I went to University of North Texas. There's a little fact about me. And
Wow.
I went there. They identify all the cadavers. And
Wow.
they do all the, and Parabon's amazing. And let me tell you something. This is the last thing I'll say. They have a
Famous
technology
last
now.
words.
Parabon Nanolabs can take DNA. You don't need a lot, but you can't have just a little. But they can take DNA of almost any kind if it's the right amount, and they can create an almost perfectly accurate depiction of the person, the suspect, or you know what I mean, if it's bones and they're trying to identify a victim, of their face. And they have used that to solve so many cases in the last couple of years, including a guy from Philly who killed a very popular school teacher. And when they compared the AI rendition, it's not even AI, I don't know what you call it, the digital biometrics that were created from this, it's not a sketch, but the offender's face based on DNA using science, it's an exact replica. Like it's him. It's like if you ran it through a phone filter.
That is crazy. All right, we're
Yeah.
gonna break now. You ready? You need to stop talking.
I'm done.
All right. I'm gonna say goodbye to the people. But thank you so much for coming. Everybody
God
say
bless.
goodbye and good night to Obi. And we'll schedule this maybe for one night next week if you're around.
Yes, we'll do round 2.
Everyone's like, what? I got homework now. I got
We'll talk
homework.
Virginia.
All right. Goodbye, my darling. I'll keep you backstage for a
Goodbye.
moment though, if you want to hang out. Thank you everyone so much for hanging in there. This was longer than we thought it would go, but we haven't even gotten halfway with all of the incredible research that she has done. Lily, I saw you were asking how you get a gifted membership. It's totally random. So the more that you participate in the chat, when someone gifts memberships, YouTube randomly distributes them to people in the chat. So the more you contribute, the more, and you have to enable gifts somehow on your phone. I don't know. It's somewhere with 3 dots and then you enable, in. Thank you so much. I know this was a ton of information, you guys. I hope that you'll like the stream, share the stream. It was an intimate crowd tonight, but there was so much information. I'm sure that you will be rewatching it to catch all of the things that you might have missed the first time. She is a wealth of information. She's unbelievable. The 2 streams that I did were on November 18th and 20th, and those are both regarding cold cases on Long Island. I linked them in the chat in this video description below for easy access if you want to go back and watch those so that you're a little bit more familiar with the cases that we've already been talking about. And she has done so much research on this that I hate to cut her off, but I think it's better for us to break it up because you need to digest the first part before we can even get to the second part. So thank you to my moderators for keeping it classy. Scott, you were real busy in there tonight. I see you. I love you. Happy holidays. Thank you for always being there and for being so amazing at policing the chat. Thanks everyone for keeping it classy. Thank you to my channel members. I love you for wanting to be part of my cupcake posse, and for all of the replay viewers and the viewers, don't forget to hit the like, the thumbs up, subscribe. It's totally free. And remember everyone, be cool, be kind, be classy. It's not hard. I'm exhausted. I'm going to see you guys real soon. Good night, everybody.